Good Monday morning to you. It is 7 o'clock. Coming up on today's show, at least 24 people are now confirmed to have died in wildfires in Los Angeles.
Plus, the anti-corruption minister accused of benefiting from corruption. Can Tulip Sadiq survive? We'll ask the government in the next few minutes.
And how many journalists does it take to change a light bulb? Stay with us to find out.
It's Monday, the 13th of January. Your headlines. A warning that the California wildfires could be the costliest disaster in US history, destroying homes, businesses and places of worship.
I announced my retirement on Sunday, and then the church burned to the ground on Tuesday.
Also ahead, the Prime Minister faces growing calls to sack his anti-corruption minister, Tulip Sadiq, over her family finances. A bereaved mum looks for answers after her son's death. MPs debate whether parents should be able to access their children's social media. And the space race ignites. Amazon founder Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin rocket prepares to make its inaugural launch in the next few minutes. We'll bring it to you live. A very good morning to you. At least 24 people are now confirmed to have been killed by wildfires in Los Angeles. The state's governor says it could be the costliest disaster in US history. And firefighters are scrambling to get the fires under control before high winds forecast to fan the flames come back again. Our correspondent, David Blevins, has this report for us from Los Angeles.
They are desperate for hope. But the people and communities displaced by wildfires have lost everything.
It's my home church. It's my everything church.
Another congregation opened its doors to Altadena Community Church.
We're still finding out where people fled to. And so a chance to get together. It's a long drive out, but it's worth it because we need hugs. We need hugs.
The feeling of losing my church, the building is gone, it hasn't really sunk in yet.
Where do you find hope? Where does a person of faith find hope in the midst of this?
God.
1 in 3 members no longer has a home. Reverend Paul Tellstrom feels the weight of that.
We just have to get up tomorrow morning and start forward and make it happen all over. And I know people are tired. I mean, one of the difficult things is that I announced my retirement on Sunday, and then the church burned to the ground on Tuesday. How do you tell people it's going to be okay? But you know what? It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. We will do this.
A community coming together, politicians divided. President-elect Donald Trump calling Californian Democrats incompetent. This is one of the worst catastrophes in the history of our country, he posted on his Truth social media platform, adding, they just can't put out the fires. What's wrong with them? Criticism rejected by the Californian governor.
Well, I called for him to come out, take a look for himself. We want to do it in the spirit of an open hand, not a closed fist. He's the president-elect. I respect the office. I don't know what he's referring to when he talks about the Delta smelt in reservoirs. The reservoirs are completely full, the state reservoirs here in Southern California. That mis and disinformation, I don't think advantages or aids any of us.
It's an unrelenting battle. Fires still raging across Los Angeles. And looters continue to take advantage of evacuated homes. One of them arrested, dressed as a firefighter. Reinforcements have arrived from Mexico. Fire crews on the ground are exhausted, attempting to save life and property. There's a real heart attachment to places of worship, where these people have marked the milestones of their lives. But churches, mosques and synagogues also serve as community centres in these neighbourhoods, where people come when they need help. And they're gone. They're watching and waiting in hope that the worst has passed. But with warnings that the wind could strengthen again into the middle of the week, all they can do is pray. David Blevins, Sky News in Los Angeles.
Let's speak now to Clara Hunter from the Los Angeles Times newspaper. Joins us bright and early. Thanks so much for joining us, Clara. What, first of all, is the latest, as you understand it, in terms of the status of the fires that remain?
Yep, we still have the Palisades and Eaton fires, the two biggest blazes. burning a lot of ground. The Palisades fire is about 13% contained, and the Eaton fire, the one in Altadena where that church was, it's about 27% contained. These aren't terrible numbers, but it's because we have these really high winds forecast on the horizon, the worst of which will come Tuesday, that there is a lot of alarm that they aren't more contained at this point. It's just been such a never-ending stream of bad news here the last week that hearing that's coming in the pipeline has put the city back on edge again.
I mean, as you said, it's just been a terrible week of bad news, and it's crazy to think that it's been affecting residential areas quite so long. The blame game, I think it's fair to call it that, has already begun. Is that normal at this stage of a sort of devastating fire like this?
I feel like there's nothing about these fires that are normal right now. They're so far out of proportion with what we have recently experienced in the region. I think, of course, when a natural disaster strikes, people are always looking at who to blame. We had news today that the Eaton fire, the devastating one in Pasadena, might have been caused by some electrical power lines. That's an investigation going on. But I think the political blame game is particularly unpalatable right now. I don't know. I personally wish we could all just band together and focus on helping people who've lost their homes or might still lose their homes before all that politicking comes into play, but it's not really what we've seen.
What is the position at the LA Times towards those in power, and whether more could have been done in terms of preparation? Is the conclusion it's too early to try and get into that stage of the blame game?
I think, yes, on a level, it's too early. We really don't know what caused the fire, what resources weren't in place that should have been in place. We did have some of our investigative reporters found that there was a reservoir in the Pacific Palisades that was completely dry and empty at the time of the fire. I mean, that clearly is a big question mark, and Governor Newsom has opened an investigation into that. So I think there are early signs of some things that went wrong, but it's going to take a while to really look through all the rubble in the aftermath of this to get all the answers we're looking for.
Do you feel like people in and around Los Angeles are, though, really galvanized and coming together to try and make sure LA does bounce back?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that has been the real silver lining of this. The level of community unity and spirit is kind of unparalleled in my time in the city. There's just been this big outpouring of support. I mean, my inbox is inundated with people asking how they can help. Any of the evacuation centers, the shelters are all fully staffed with volunteers for the most part. So that has been heartwarming to see.
Clara, thank you so much for joining us, and we very much hope that those two big remaining blazes come under control ahead of those high winds. Clara Hunter joining us there from the LA Times. And Leah, as we switch, I guess just before we switch to all the day's other stories, it is extraordinary to think how long we've been talking about this, how devastating it continues to be, and it is terrifying to think that those high winds are returning.
Yeah, and then it's the small stories, isn't it, of people losing everything, you know, photos of babies and possessions that mean so much, homes that are 100 years old. But then, you know, the heroes in that story, the firefighters heading in to the blazes and rescuing people and bringing it under control. So it's a really difficult one to juggle, isn't it, as the days and the weeks pass. But, yeah, it's very hard.
Well, we'll continue, of course, to have all of the latest from Los Angeles throughout the days ahead. But for now, time for the other top stories of the day.
Thank you so much, Wilfred. Police divers have been deployed to the River Dee, this is in Aberdeen, in a search for two sisters who disappeared in the city about 5 days ago. 32-year-old Eliza and Henrietta Hertz were last seen on CCTV after leaving home on Tuesday afternoon. Now, police marine units have been patrolling the river with divers searching under the water, and specialist search teams and police dogs are also trying to trace the pair. 3 people have been killed after an avalanche hit a group of 5 skiers in Italy's northern Piedmont region. The 2 survivors have been airlifted to hospital. An alert had been issued in the area above 2,000 metres, warning of considerable danger of avalanches. The Wanted star, Max George, has revealed he's got to have a lung biopsy. This is weeks after having a pacemaker fitted. The 36-year-old says he hopes the biopsy will shed some light on his heart problems. Hundreds of people gathered in Liverpool for a vigil for drag icon, the Vivienne, also known as James Lee Williams. St George's Hall was lit up in green. This was in honour of the role in The Wizard of Oz. The Vivienne rose to fame, didn't he, after winning the Drag Race UK in 2019. He died, aged 32. A new memorial is to be unveiled, marking 25 years since the removal of the ban on homosexuality in the military. So back then, gay servicemen were given dishonourable discharge and received criminal convictions. We'll be speaking to a Falklands veteran who was dismissed in 1993 because of his sexuality. This is at 8:30 this morning. Bereaved parents could soon be given access to their children's social media. The campaign has been led by the mother of teenager Jules Sweeney, who's still searching for answers nearly 3 years after her son's death. Our political correspondent Tamara Cohen has more.
The pain in my heart about not knowing what happened that night and why is incredibly hard.
It's coming up to 3 years since 14-year-old Jules was found dead in his bedroom at home, and his mother is no closer to knowing why. But she believes his online activity could hold crucial clues.
The day he died, he had been playing football that day with a group of friends. He was always on his bike, so it wasn't like he was constantly in his room on his own.
Today we're going to be testing the Butterkers Toffee Crunchy Popple.
I just can't believe we all missed depression. I have always said I don't know it's social media. It's always been my gut feeling, but I want the right to know.
With help from her son's friends, she's managed to guess his password and get into some of his accounts, but it's not a full picture.
He did do an awful lot of challenges, which actually at the time we thought they were just silly, viral challenges. I never knew about some of the more dangerous ones. The police didn't ask for the data from social media companies. The detective didn't even find out he had more than one account, more than one TikTok and Instagram account.
Gloucestershire Police said they did review Jules's phone but can't see all personal accounts unless investigating a criminal offence. She started a petition to call for bereaved parents to have full access to a child's social media history, which has attracted more than 120,000 signatures and will be debated by MPs. She's also preparing to take a case to the High Court to get answers at huge expense.
The solicitors quoted $86,000 to pay for barristers' legal fees, court costs, which is out of most people's reach.
Her lawyer has helped other bereaved families get data, but it's not easy.
Getting that information is incredibly difficult. It's a moving target. The social media companies sort of take this line that it's not for us, it's not our responsibility, which I think is, it makes for a very challenging set of circumstances, and it's not right.
The government say a new data protection bill will order tech companies to retain content when a child dies for a coroner to access, but not a child's parents. Ellen fears it may still leave families looking for answers. Tamara Cohen, Sky News, Cheltenham.
Other stories. Now, Sky News has contacted Meta, which owns Instagram, and also contacted TikTok and Snapshot. None of those platforms provided an on-the-record response, but all are understood to have been in contact with Jules's family. Now, private car park operators have promised to change their rules so that drivers aren't penalised if they fail to pay within 5 minutes. Molly is here to tell us more about that particular story. Molly, I mean, it's quite striking that you could be punished for not paying within quite a short space of time. But just give us the background of this and talk us through why things are changing.
Yeah, it's a complicated picture, isn't it? There's so many different types of parking fines. There's private companies, there's councils. This one in particular is about private car parks. So it's your NCPs, it's your Euro car park. And it's about, as you say, that 5-minute rule, which doesn't seem like a massive amount of time. And the particular case we're talking about today is a woman called Rosie Hudson in Derby. Now, she was fined 10 times, amounting to just under £2,000 because she was basically going into a car park where she didn't have very good mobile phone signal, so she couldn't pay on her phone on her app, which she was required to do, and those fines kept mounting up. She kept having the same situation, so she ended up having to go to court. And now these private companies are saying that they're going to look at again, essentially at this situation, and it's because Rosie's not alone. It happens to thousands of us. In fact, they say 41,000 every single day of these tickets are issued relating to that 5-minute rule, and actually between July and September last year there were more than 3.5 million. So that gives you the kind of context about how many people we're talking about. Things that they're potentially looking at, better account of tech. That example giving you all you need to know in terms of, you think potentially by now that we're using apps all the time, aren't we, to kind of do our daily lives. A cap on fines, so looking at potentially a £50 cap rather than that £100, fair appeal system, and banning the aggressive use of language on our tickets. It's happening to a lot of people, and I think that case really serves to illustrate why we've got now these industry bodies coming together saying that they're going to kind of re-look at how private companies are operating and how their system's working or not, as the case may be for lots of people.
But also really important, isn't it, before these changes come in, for people who feel like they have the legal ground to fight any kind of fine.
And it is a fight, isn't it? Like I've been there so many times where you feel like you either have to pay it and then pick up the fight afterwards. It happens to a lot of people. It's happened to me with this 5-minute rule before, and you really have to kind of know your rights and really fight for it to make change and make sure that you don't unfairly pay.
They often usually structure it rather cleverly, don't they? So, the fine's 80 quid, but it's 40 if you pay within 2 weeks. Usually you just pay it. I mean, it's not a bad tactic.
Fight, but then it's about clawing back that money, isn't it? So
I prefer the old, when they still have the old machines. I mean, this sounded like my mum here, but like,
then you need cash. Do you always have cash?
No, you can usually put your credit card on it, but at least it's like it's physical and you do it. Like those apps and like logging in, and then you have to set up an account, and it's a different one for different places. It's a
when
nightmare.
You're in a rush,
like,
or you don't have mobile phone signal.
Is better. Yeah.
Is the way.
Well, great stuff. Thanks so much. Appreciate it. Right, let's have a quick look at all of the day's top headlines from the papers. Well, on the Mirror, we've got the stabbing of a nurse on duty in casualty at Royal Oldham Hospital. That's the top story in the Mirror today. Front page of the Mail for you points to the current pressure on hospitals, with 500,000 patients waiting 12 hours on trolleys to be treated. The Express turns its fire on Labour in an interview with the senior Tory James Cleverly, accusing them of being inept and launching a tax assault on families and businesses. The Telegraph, meanwhile, says Treasury officials have told ministers they need to be ruthless in drawing up public spending cuts to reboot the economic recovery. And The Guardian says Keir Starmer is to announce a massive hike in the use of AI in everything from schools to mending potholes. And it's on that story that we pick up now with the government. Pat McFadden, the Minister for Intergovernment Relations, is with me. Very good morning to you, Mr McFadden.
Good morning.
You're here today to announce a big unleashing of the power of AI, I believe. So it's fair to say you very much see this as a government as an opportunity more than a threat.
Yes, I think so. This technology is coming anyway. It's coming internationally. It's going to come to the private sector in the way that it's used. And the question for the UK is, how do we take advantage most? So we're publishing an action plan today, which really has two things at its heart. One is to make sure the UK is a welcome home for the many billions of pounds of AI investment that is happening. It either happens here or it happens in another country. We want that investment here for the jobs, for the skills, for the technology. But the second thing is the applications. The UK has had a big question mark over its productivity for many years, and that's related to our economic difficulties. So if we can use AI, both in the public and the private sectors, to increase our productivity, then that can bring economic benefits for the whole country.
I don't think anybody would doubt that over the long term, AI can boost the economy as a whole and can therefore boost jobs as a whole. But similarly, is it fair to say that in the short term, empowering AI might cost jobs?
It's a disruptive technology, but I think it's too pessimistic to just use this as a kind of job count mechanism. Let me give you an example. Later this morning, I'm going to visit a school to see an AI teaching assistant, which is saving teachers about 3.5 hours preparation time a week where they use it. That's not replacing teachers. The teacher remains at the heart of the lesson. But if you speak to any teacher, they'll tell you about workload, about repetitive processes, about the amount that goes into lesson planning. If you can have an AI teaching assistant, which was developed by the government, then that can free up teachers' time, give them their Sunday night back, and make the teaching job more rewarding than it currently is.
Could you use AI to reply to journalists, perhaps, going forward?
Oh, that's quite tempting, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure. But what we are finding is all sorts of applications that we wouldn't have thought of.
I mean, there's a bit of a joke there, obviously, but you know, there's one report that official government departments can use it to reply to emails. As you said, it can be used in teaching. A lot of people saying kids can use it for parts of their homework. I mean, is there a worry that this goes too far and that humans then drop the ball a little bit on the level of detail and focus that we should be having to our daily tasks?
The approach we should have is test and learn. Mistakes are going to be made in this. It's a new technology. It's going to be disruptive. Not everything is going to be plain sailing, but you've got to ask yourself, as you go through all these objections, if you stand back, do you want this to be developed elsewhere? Because it's going to be developed anyway. Mm-hmm. And what good would that do the UK? And if we tried to press a pause button and say we don't want this technology, all that would happen is this country would lose out, and that's something we're not prepared to see. We are ambitious for the United Kingdom because we've got huge assets in this kind of area. It's a new kind of economy. We're more of a service-based economy. We've got good skills. We've got fantastic universities. We produce graduates and postgraduates with skills in this field more than other countries do. Let us use these advantages to make sure that the wave of investment that's going into this technology around the world, that a decent proportion of it comes here to the United Kingdom.
Tulip Sadiq has referred herself to the Prime Minister's Standards Advisor. When do you expect to see his response? And is his response final? Is it waiting for that response and following it regardless?
Well, he's independent, so I can't govern his timetable, but it's important that he's independent. Let me set out how this process works. When we came into office about 6 months ago, we produced a new ministerial code, and that ministerial code increased the powers of the independent advisor. It was something we'd promised we'd do in our manifesto. Tulip Sadiq has referred herself to this person so that all these allegations can be looked at. He then produces a report about adherence to the ministerial code or whether any rules have been broken, and that's the right way to do it.
I guess the question it sounds like you're saying you'll wait for that report. And
yes,
you won't
we will, yeah.
act before that. Was there vetting? I mean, you probably were involved in it, given your role in the Cabinet Office. Was there vetting and consideration for all people appointed to the Cabinet, but in particular the anti-corruption minister?
Well, everybody goes through a propriety and ethics process when they're appointed. I know what I told the propriety and ethics team, because they ask you all about your interests and so on, but I'm not party to what anyone else has told them. So, but yes, every minister goes through a process like that.
Is it, you know, over the last decade, we've talked a lot about these sorts of issues with various predecessors of yours in the Cabinet. Often it's said, you know, it's not just about avoiding a conflict of interest, it's about avoiding the perception of a conflict of interest. I mean, does that apply even more clearly in the case of your anti-corruption minister?
Look, I think she's done the right thing by referring herself to the independent advisor. Let him look through all this. He's independent. I'm not independent. I'm a member of the Cabinet. Let the independent advisor, whose job it is to do this, look at these things and let us see what he's got to say once he's done that.
And I guess my final question on this, because I understand you're trying to wait for the final report, but in your personal opinion, if it is decided that she didn't explicitly do anything wrong or have knowledge of doing it, but that she has benefited from somebody else's corruption, a family member's corruption, no less, is that a problem?
Look, you're taking me into, I know this sounds like a politician's answer, but hypothetical questions about what might be concluded here. And it won't be me, in the end, who makes this judgment. It'll be the independent advisor, because it's his job to do so. And that's the right way to handle it.
AI couldn't have given a better answer than that.
There
Spot on. No, I'm kidding. I understand. We'll wait for the report, I guess. We'll see what happens in the meantime. Let's talk about China. Obviously, the Chancellor's high-profile trip there. Is it fair to say that you see China as less of a threat than the previous government?
I think it was right that the Chancellor went. I think these calls saying she shouldn't have gone were wrong and a mistake. Actually, that would have been a bad move not to have gone. And we've got a trading relationship with China. And so it's right that we try to maximise that, but we also have a security position as well. And all the way through this, you have to balance security with your need for investment and economic growth. And that's the kind of clear-eyed approach that we'll take for this. But we do have a trading relationship with China, just as we do with many other countries around the world.
Rishi Sunak put China in the bracket of Iran, Russia and North Korea, a four list of countries that he saw as a threat to the United Kingdom. Is it fair to say that the Labour government, the Keir Starmer government, doesn't see China in that same bracket?
Well, with the Tories, it ebbed and flowed. The economic and financial dialogue that the Chancellor took part in over the weekend, this was something started years ago by the Conservatives, but it never really took off, partly because of COVID and partly because of the internal position-taking that was going on in the Conservative Party over China. We don't have that internal position-taking going on. So we come at this asking, how do we protect our security and how do we maximise investment and look after our own economic interests too? You've got to balance those two things, and that is the approach that we'll take when dealing with China.
Very quickly, final question. England versus Afghanistan cricket match. Lisa Nandy said it should go ahead. Do you agree with that?
If that's what Lisa Nandy said, then I'm sure she's right.
Pam McFadden, thanks so much for joining us. Good to see you this morning, as always. Well, still to come here on The Breakfast Show, where we'll be speaking to the former Security Minister, Tom Tugendhat, about that backlash to the Chancellor's trip to China. That's coming up in about 10 minutes' time. We're also live at the world's largest religious event in India. We'll also keep monitoring that rocket launch of Blue Origin's due in the next 5 to 10 minutes. We'll be right back.
Mayhem in the Middle East, rippling in America's West.
Get back! Get back!
The resolve of these protesters is now being seriously tested. I saw police being forced or pushing young men and women to the ground as they made almost 100 arrests.
None of this is a peaceful protest.
I'm Martha Kellner and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Los Angeles. How are you feeling?
I am angry. It is an anti-woman agenda.
Sky News, get the full story first. Will the cold affect your voters?
Well, we have a lot of tremendous support, but it's nasty out there.
Can you beat Donald Trump, Governor? President Biden, do you trust President Xi? President Biden says that this meeting went well. He said real progress was made on a whole host of issues. Will your candidates win?
I hope so. I think they will. I think they're great candidates.
There's no doubt that Kamala Harris and her team are harnessing the power of social media. Do you think Kamala is brat?
Kamala's brat.
Are you scared?
Yeah, we were scared. It was terrible. Strong wind, building tearing down.
As them say, our God works, so we can't do nothing.
The people here know that worse storms may well be on their way. Free, wherever you get your news.
Excited. I've had severe nightmares of these people coming in and just taking me in the middle of the night.
Ghislaine Maxwell has pleaded not guilty to all 6 charges against her. Mum, how are you feeling today?
Jeffrey said, you answer to Ghislaine, you just don't cross her.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
weeknights on Sky News.
This is your chance. Tell people.
Welcome to the Politics Hub.
Our police force has apologised. If you want to find out about Grimsby, you come to the docks.
I'm live in Jerusalem.
Are you not concerned that that could lead to all-out war?
Hello there, good evening. There are fears of an upsurge in violence. What's at stake here?
You are watching the press preview, a first look at the front pages as they arrive.
Welcome back to The Breakfast Show. Well, coming up in just a moment, criticism of the Chancellor's visit to China. So, should she have gone? We'll get the thoughts of the Conservative MP Tom Tugendhat in just a moment. He's standing by. But first, a reminder of all of the day's top stories.
Thanks so much, Wilfred. Authorities in Los Angeles say wildfires have now claimed the lives of 24 people. Elsewhere, the Blue Origin space company, this is owned by Jeff Bezos. It's set to launch for its new Glenn rocket. You can see the countdown clock in the top right-hand corner of the screen. We'll bring that live as it happens. And Sir Keir Starmer is under growing pressure to sack Anti-Corruption Minister Tulip Siddiq. This is over allegations about her family finances. Government Minister Pat McFadden told this programme she's done the right thing by referring herself to the independent advisor. And MPs are to debate a change to the law proposed by a bereaved mother who wants parents to get access to children's social media.
Leah, thank you. The Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, returns from China today, a trip, of course, she left on late last week. Some Conservative MPs have been critical of the visit, including the former Security Minister Tom Tugendhat, who joins me now live from Taiwan, no less. Very good morning to you, Mr Tugendhat. Thanks so much for joining us. Your views in general on this topic are clear, and you've written about it and spoken about it of late. How would you define China as it relates to the UK? Are they the UK's enemy?
They're certainly a threat. You just need to look at what's been going on in the United Kingdom. You know, in the last few years, we've seen a Consul General for the People's Republic of China beating up individuals who were protesting outside the consulate. We've seen illegal police stations set up in Croydon and Glasgow. We've seen the attempt to silence debate in our universities. We've seen intellectual property thefts, damaging businesses, seeing British employers losing out and British employees losing business because of the actions of the Chinese state. And of course, we've seen the targeting of Hong Kongers in London, and it's just continuing. So, you know, you can call them what you like, but they're unquestionably threatening our interests and unquestionably threatening our values at home.
Presumably, you're not suggesting we should have zero trade at all with the second biggest economy in the world. And, of course, Rachel Reeves is the Chancellor, the finance minister in charge of the economy. In light of both of those facts, is it not reasonable to expect her to meet her counterpart?
Look, I think it's absolutely reasonable that British officials should meet their Chinese counterparts. But when you send the second most important person in the government, and we have to assume that even Pat McFadden considers Rachel to be the second most important person in the government, then it's because you want to change the relationship, not because you want to maintain it. Now, if you want to change it, why are you changing it? What are you changing it to? It certainly wasn't clear at all to me, either from your interview with Pat just now, or indeed with what the Treasury said over the last few days about the Chancellor's visit, what that change was going to be. Are they going to open up the UK market without tariffs at all to Chinese vehicles, in which case we're going to destroy the UK car industry? Are they going to be looking to make increasing Chinese investments in the United Kingdom, in which case, why has Rachel Reeves only come back with £600 million, which frankly, in international investment terms is peanuts? You know, it's not at all clear to me what the strategy is. And if you don't know what the strategy is, then all you're doing is you're looking like you're ignoring the security threats at home in exchange for pennies abroad.
But so if it's OK, though, to meet your counterpart, which as I understand you did when you were security minister as well, I mean, if they'd met in the UK or if they'd met on a summit of some ilk, then that's all right? It's just the physical location of the meeting?
Sorry, I didn't meet my Chinese counterpart. It wouldn't have been appropriate.
Oh, OK, fine. I thought I read in your... Maybe it was when you were chairman of the Select Committee. Either way, you're saying that meeting your counterpart is OK?
So I met, as chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee, I was invited to China in 2017. And it was on that trip that I discovered quite how hostile it was. We were, in many ways, targeted. My room was done over in a particularly obvious and therefore an attempt to intimidate. One of our members of our delegation was attempted to be entrapped. We saw very clearly what the Chinese state was like, but that was 2017 when we were still hopeful. The reality is the last decade of Xi Jinping has been very different from the years of Hu Jintao or Jiang Zemin before him, when China was moving towards openness. And so I don't think it's appropriate now. I think we've seen a China that put the whole world at risk by hiding the truth behind the Wuhan virus, the coronavirus. We've seen a China that has increased the level of what they call wolf warrior diplomacy, this incredibly threatening behavior that we've seen around the world. I simply don't think it's appropriate. I think what is appropriate is that our embassy maintains connections, that our trade envoys develop trade where it's possible. But let's not pretend that this meeting, this visit made any real difference. It made no difference at all. All it did was allow the Chinese state to pretend that interfering in foreign countries like ours, roughing up people in the United Kingdom or intimidating professors at our university is something they can get away with, because clearly Rachel Reeves is willing to go over anyway.
Meanwhile, you're obviously joining us from Taipei, and I guess that your very presence there, even though you're only a backbench MP now, will be seen as provocative by Beijing and by China. How do you weigh that up in terms of whether or not it is constructive to be there? Is this something that Kemi Badenoch has approved, or is this something you've done on your own right?
I'm, as you rightly say, I'm a backbench MP, so I haven't spoken to anybody in the Conservative leadership about it. It's not a matter for them; it's a matter for me. And I fail to see how it's provocative for a British MP to seek closer relationships with a country that is so absolutely fundamental to our economic future. You know, TSMC, the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, produces 92% of the world's top-end semiconductors and over half of the world's semiconductors at all. This is absolutely vital to British national interests. And so understanding the politics of Taiwan, understanding the drivers behind Taiwanese decisions, and of course having a relationship with Taiwanese officials and politicians, I think is vital to Britain's national security interests. And frankly, it is nothing to do with the PRC. They choose to see my actions as provocative when I seek to defend the interests of British people in the United Kingdom. So frankly, I don't take their opinions very seriously.
Which is fine, but therefore you do accept that they see it as provocative, and that was kind of the gist behind my question as to whether it is constructive.
Wilfred, look, authoritarian dictatorships have a habit of seeing independent MPs and Democrats saying things that are in the interests of freedom as provocative. Well, sorry, that's their problem, not ours.
And just finally, whilst we've got you, wanted to get your take on Tulip Siddiq. She's referred herself to the independent advisor on ethics. Pat McFadden said earlier we should wait now for his conclusions. Do you agree that that's the right way to go about it?
I think it's a pretty extraordinary situation to find ourselves in, where we have the admittedly interim head of state of a very important partner nation, Bangladesh, being so clear in the Sunday Times as accusing the anti-corruption minister of very serious corruption. You can hide behind the legal process if you like, or you can show leadership. I do wish Keir Starmer would sometimes show some leadership.
I guess it's a bit. Some might suggest it's a bit hypocritical to say that, because there was lots of moments in the past when Conservative MPs were going through investigations and said, "Please wait until the independent advisor reports."
You didn't hear me saying that, though, did you, Wilfred?
No. Well, that's fine. That's good to hear then. I mean, so that's something that you thought was wrong when your colleague said it, and you think that this is a moment to say that they should just get on with it and act and not wait for that report.
I was clear when it was my party in power, and I'm clear now.
Tom Tugendhat, thanks so much for joining us from Taipei in Taiwan, the former security minister. Well, as we've been discussing this morning, Sir Keir Starmer is under pressure to sack the anti-corruption minister Tugendhat Siddique over allegations about her family finances. The allegations centre on links between the MP and the political allies of her aunt, the former Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina. Ms Siddique currently rents a £2 million house in North London, owned by a businessman with reported links to Sheikh Hasina's Awami League party. She also owns a flat in central London that the Financial Times reports was gifted to her by an ally of her aunt. And she was registered as living at another London property that was transferred to her sister in 2009 by a lawyer who has represented Sheikh Hasina's government. Well, Serena's here with all the details on this. Serena, we've heard from both sides now this morning their views on this, and I guess there's a gap, unsurprisingly, on which each side thinks should be the course of action.
Well, yeah, it's easy for the Conservatives to say we think she should be sacked. They're saying it looks like corruption. They're jumping to conclusions already. The government are saying on the other side, as you rightly say, let's wait for this investigation. I think Pat McFadden this morning couldn't answer your question on whether, optically this isn't good for the government. It's not just that the anti-corruption minister shouldn't be involved in any corruption at all, or allegations of such, but should be seen to be completely clean as well. And I think it goes to Keir Starmer's broader point of running on this squeaky clean platform and running on a platform of saying we want to bring back public service into politics. We've had the sort of shambles of the past, and then he's got ministers sort of seemingly embroiled in that again. So while I think the government are hoping to wait for this investigation to finish, I think pressure is coming from all sides now for questions to be answered by Tugendhat Siddique.
Serena, great stuff as always. Thanks so much. Now to the world's largest religious event, which kicks off in India today. It's held once every 12 years and draws crowds of 400 million Hindu pilgrims. Let's go live to our India correspondent, Neville Lazarus, who's in the northern state of Uttar Pradesh. Neville, talk us through what is expected in the day ahead.
Well, today marks the first day of the celebrations of the Mahakumbh. It goes on for 45 days, and the expectation of about 400 million people are supposed to converge on the banks of the Yamuna, Yamuna and the holy river Ganga. Now, we've seen thousands and thousands of people since early morning that have converged here. They take a bath, a holy dip, which is sort of a purification of the body and soul. But it's also testament to the kind of organization. It's like a pop-up tent city on these banks, which go on for dozens of kilometers. Over 10,000 acres has been covered. 160,000 tents have been pitched. About 400 kilometers of temporary roads. 150,000 toilets. 200 kilometers of sewage lines have been laid out in this place. Doctors, nurses, and temporary hospitals, fire stations, police stations have all been set up. It's like a new district. A new district has been created out of this, on the banks of this, the two rivers where they converge. And it is a big showcase for Prime Minister Modi, his right-wing nationalist party. This is a big push by him for domestic political reasons, for domestic audiences, and also to bring as many people to this place as possible. And that's why we've seen these massive numbers that have converged here. But at the same time, there are activists, health activists, who have raised concerns that this also could be a reason for health risks, and also environmental activists. They've spent about $815 million on this event, and it is, for the next 45 days, will be one of the biggest religious gatherings in the world.
Neville, great stuff. Thanks so much. Neville Lazarus there for us. Well, the space race set to ignite once again this morning. We are waiting the launch of Blue Origin's latest rocket. That's the company, of course, owned by Amazon founder Jeff Bezos. Its New Glenn rocket is about to set off on its main voyage. It was meant to take off around 6 a.m. It has been delayed a number of times this morning. It's been reset now, the launch, for 8:15, as you can see from that countdown clock, 31 minutes and counting. And we'll have that for you live when it takes place. Also, still to come this morning on The Breakfast Show, an innovative new treatment for Parkinsons. We'll speak to one of the doctors involved in a new therapy that can react to the brain in real time. We'll be right back.
day of this conflict.
They keep telling us that they want aid.
And this is what's left of it.
Tanks, heavy vehicle.
Why only in America?
People want their country to work.
Just want a job in a normal life.
Why are these homes empty?
I want you to be honest with people.
That has happened within minutes.
Sky News, the full story first. Free wherever you get your news.
We've come to one of Moscow's Cold War bunkers. It was built as a top-secret command centre.
Being here really feels like you're stepping back in time. I'm Ivor Bennett, Sky's Moscow correspondent.
A show of military might and menace.
Courage, bravery and sacrifice will win the day.
It's a new subject. They'll learn about combat drones and some how to handle a Kalashnikov.
The Kremlin continues to put forward its own version of events, both present and past.
There's no mention of the fact that Russia invaded its neighbour. That's rewriting history, isn't it?
Now we have to read it carefully.
Vladimir Putin put forward his plan for a ceasefire in Ukraine, telling Kiev, pull out of your eastern territories and the war will end. Why should the West trust you?
Frankly, I don't care whether the West trusts us or not.
Vladimir Putin is already the Kremlin's longest-serving leader since Stalin. The question is, what will a fifth Putin term mean for Russia and the world?
Why do you support Vladimir Putin, Mr. Segal?
I can't answer questions that stupid.
I've watched Vladimir Putin attempt to create a new world order.
The St. Petersburg Economic Forum was the backdrop to Vladimir Putin's latest verbal volley that Russia could send missiles to other nations to target the West.
Ambassador, I wonder, shall we have a quick word for Sky News?
Is the West right? Are you fueling Russia's war machine?
Swedish media, oh my God, you're not afraid of being here.
American journalist Evan Gershkovich is on trial here, but was first on display.
Russia says Evan Gershkovich was caught red-handed, but has never produced any evidence to back that up. Sky News. Get the full story first.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. A new start to Sunday.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Welcome back. A new technology has been approved for patients with Parkinson's, which can adjust treatment in real time in response to your brain activity. For 30 years, patients have been treated with electrical signals known as deep brain stimulation, which can disrupt unwanted movement. But for the first time, it's been personalised in real time, or it can be. Let's speak to Professor Alan Wone, consultant neurologist, at the University of Bristol and North Bristol Trust, who's involved in this project. Very good morning to you, Professor. Thanks so much for joining us. So just sum up for us what this new technology is.
So what we have here is we've had deep brain stimulation for about 2 decades. And what we do with that is, rather than drugs, we're treating the brain of people with Parkinson's with electricity, putting impulses in to improve their symptoms. But up until now, we've only been able to put electricity in, but now we can record out the brain's abnormal electrical signals. And what this new development is it allows a real-time, moment-by-moment switching, so that if the signal coming out is abnormal, you give a bit more electricity. If the signal coming out is normalised again, you give a bit less. So you get better symptom control, less side effects, and it means the patient doesn't necessarily have to adjust their dose up and down, so they can just get on with their lives. So it's personalised, dynamic deep brain stimulation. It's the next level of this exciting therapy.
Professor, what is it like when you and your team, it's being described as groundbreaking this, what is it like when you have this type of breakthrough?
So the research, I should say, for this particular aspect has been done elsewhere at many centres. What we have in Bristol here, although it will now be available at other centres across the UK, is that we've been implanting patients with this device. And so the system is already in them. It's oven ready, if you like. And we've got about 30 people ready to go. So starting next week, we'll be turning on this additional facility, meaning they'll switch from having
conventional deep brain stimulation to this new so-called closed loop or adaptive DBS because of this ability to sense the brain signal and adjust automatically. So we're quite looking forward to this time next week. And so I'll have to let you after that what it's like. But it's always good to offer hope, which is great.
Well, it absolutely is. And so what portion of Parkinson's patients have this sort of treatment rather than, as you mentioned, the sort of chemical route? And do you think this will drastically alter that balance if this makes this type of treatment so much more effective?
Yeah, so there's about 150,000 people in the UK with Parkinson's. It's particularly good when they're in the middle stage of their disease. So early on, because neurosurgery has some risks, you'll be managed with medication. But in the middle stage of the condition, medication may not be enough. So you're switching from being great some of the day and moving well when the drugs work. But when they don't, you're not able to move. So you could go from, for example, being at work and conducting your business to then being stuck in a chair. If you want to smooth that out, you can use deep brain stimulation to do that. So it's that middle portion. Sadly, if people are too advanced and they're dementing, this isn't for them. So it's probably about 5 to 10% of the people with Parkinson's that might eventually get this type of therapy.
And Professor, what's the cost here? And when can the majority of people suffering have this type of treatment?
So, as said, we've in Bristol implanted about 30 people, and because the reason this is coming out now is that the work's been done, and now we've got approval from the regulator. It's got CE marking, so the system can be switched on to function in this way. So therefore, it's not just going to be available in Bristol now, but through other deep brain stimulation centres in the UK and indeed across Europe and Japan. They're not yet there in North America. We're ahead of them. So it's got a broad availability that is now ready to go for patients in clinic. In terms of the costs, that's obviously variable across countries, but around the first year, you're looking at, and I'm not the best person to comment on this, something of the order of about £30,000. But then, of course, you don't have the same ongoing costs as you do with drugs. So the drugs may cost similar amounts per year that you're having to then spend year on year for this middle stage of you're using a pump to deliver drugs to the brain.
And just finally, Professor, on this, what level of advancement overall in terms of, forget what the details are, I guess what the results are for patients with Parkinson's. What's the pace of development been like over the last decade, and are you optimistic that it's about to speed up significantly with the end goal being what?
So first off, Parkinson's is the fastest growing neurological condition in the UK. So it's very important we engage with this particular neurodegenerative disease. There's been a good advance over the last 20 years in symptom controlling medication, one of the most significant of which is deep brain stimulation, and now this new advance, adaptive deep brain stimulation. But what we don't yet have is any means of slowing the disease down. So although we can treat the symptoms for a good while, little by little people are declining. So what the next stage really is to find something to slow the disease, be that growth factors, gene therapy, or stem cell therapy.
Professor Wone, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Much appreciated. Professor Alan Wone. Quick look at the weather for you before we have close to the hour. Developing Atlantic flow is bringing milder air, but southern Britain will take time to warm up. England and Wales have a patchy frost, while the north and the west are cloudy, mild and windy, with outbreaks of rain prolonged in the northwest. Southern Britain looks dry but fairly cloudy this morning. Elsewhere, it'll be largely overcast and windy, with prolonged rain moving southeast across Ireland, Northern Ireland and Scotland, followed by patchy, drizzly outbreaks. It'll be less cold in the south, mild elsewhere. Northern England and North Wales will see outbreaks of rain spreading for most parts into the afternoon, while Ireland, Scotland will be largely dry with some late brightness possible. That's your weather. Well, to close out the hour, very important debate for you. Off the back of new research that suggests 1 in 5 young people would pay someone to change a light bulb for them. And a similar number in this survey say that they don't even know what a spanner is. So we thought we'd survey 4 journalists to see what the result... We even, for this debate, have a light bulb.
Oh, fabulous.
Which I guess we all knew what that was. Would we all...
It is. Hold my hands up. I'm not sure I know how to fit it.
No.
Genuinely. Also,
Molly.
I actually think you can do... No, sorry, but I think you can sometimes do... Like, when I moved out of home, sometimes I did, like guilty, I sometimes did pay people to put things up because, you know, hear me out, you can do more damage trying to do it yourself in some of these old rental properties.
I'm with you on things like...
Maybe not a light bulb.
Not a light bulb, but putting pictures up, for example.
Yeah.
I would pay someone for that.
So I actually
so many different types of
was going to be embarrassed today because I actually paid for a handyman to do something over the weekend.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a light bulb. It was putting together very complicated two cots. Both my brother and I's babies now past 1. We're going down to our mum's house. There was not the right stuff. And I just thought it would take up the whole weekend if my brother and I did it.
Wilfred,
we don't see mum often.
Point.
And we paid a handyman. In fact, I did. George, you owe me 50%. And I just thought, worth it. But a light bulb, I thought I was going to be the embarrassed one, but at least Molly pays people to change light bulbs.
Maybe I wouldn't know. That one looks pretty simple, but you do get some quite rogue light bulbs or different types of light fittings.
DIY, Serena?
Property where the landlord didn't let me change a light bulb.
That too.
So...
What?
Yeah. We didn't have a light in our bathroom for maybe 2 weeks because we weren't allowed to change the light bulb.
Because of health and safety, or then did they charge you to do it? Sounds like a bit of a...
They didn't actually charge, in fairness, but I do know how to change a light bulb and would like to have had light for 2 weeks in a bathroom.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, the other thing which does annoy me with light bulbs, often you then check the cupboard and you've got the wrong one.
Yeah.
Screw or
exactly.
what the other
I have to go to the shop
called.
and take the physical thing and be like, can you replace it?
Bayonet is the name. There we go. I do change them myself, despite not knowing that word. Out of time. I don't need a ladder, usually. Yeah. Change it. We're out of time. We'll see you the other hour.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. A new start to Sunday.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Very good morning to you. It is 8 o'clock. Coming up on today's show, at least 24 people now confirmed to have died in wildfires in Los Angeles.
Plus, the anti-corruption minister accused of benefiting from corruption. The Tories tell this programme Tulip Sadiq should be sacked.
And we'll speak to a Falklands veteran sacked from the Royal Navy in 1999 for being gay.
It's Monday, the 13th of January. Your headlines. A warning that the California wildfires could be the costliest disaster in US history, destroying homes, businesses and places of worship.
I announced my retirement on Sunday, and then the church burned to the ground on Tuesday.
Also ahead, the Prime Minister faces growing calls to sack his anti-corruption minister, Tulip Sadiq, over her family's finances.
I think she's done the right thing by referring herself to the independent advisor.
A bereaved mum looks for answers after her son's death. MPs debating whether parents should be able to access their children's social media. And the space race ignites. Amazon founder Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin's rocket prepares to make its inaugural launch in the next few minutes. We'll bring it to you live. Very good morning to you. At least 24 people are now confirmed to have been killed by wildfires in Los Angeles. The state's governor says it could be the costliest disaster in US history, and firefighters are scrambling to get the fires under control before high winds forecast to fan the flames. Our correspondent, David Blevins, has this report from Los Angeles.
They are desperate for hope, but the people and communities displaced by wildfires have lost everything.
It's my home church. It's my everything church.
Another congregation opened its doors to Altadena Community Church.
We're still finding out where people fled to. And so a chance to get together. It's a long drive out, but it's worth it because we need hugs. We need hugs.
The feeling of losing my church, the building is gone, it hasn't really sunk in yet.
Where do you find hope? Where does a person of faith find hope in the midst of this?
God.
1 in 3 members no longer has a home. Reverend Paul Tellstrom feels the weight of that.
We just have to get up tomorrow morning and start forward and make it happen all over. And I know people are tired. I mean, one of the difficult things is that I announced my retirement on Sunday, and then the church burned to the ground on Tuesday. How do you tell people it's going to be okay? But you know what? It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. We will do this.
A community coming together, politicians divided. President-elect Donald Trump calling Californian Democrats incompetent. This is one of the worst catastrophes in the history of our country, he posted on his Truth social media platform, adding, they just can't put out the fires. What's wrong with them? Criticism rejected by the Californian governor.
Well, I call for him to come out, take a look for himself. We want to do it in the spirit of an open hand, not a closed fist. He's the president-elect. I respect the office. I don't know what he's referring to when he talks about the Delta smelt in reservoirs. The reservoirs are completely full, the state reservoirs here in Southern California. That mis and disinformation, I don't think advantages or aids any of us.
It's an unrelenting battle. Fires still raging across Los Angeles. And looters continue to take advantage of evacuated homes. One of them arrested, dressed as a firefighter. Reinforcements have arrived from Mexico. Fire crews on the ground are exhausted, attempting to save life and property. There's a real heart attachment to places of worship where these people have marked the milestones of their lives. But churches, mosques and synagogues also serve as community centres in these neighbourhoods, where people come when they need help. And they're gone. They're watching and waiting in hope that the worst has passed. But with warnings that the wind could strengthen again into the middle of the week, all they can do is pray. David Blevins, Sky News in Los Angeles.
Well, despite the many stories of destruction and despair from the fires, hope still remains. And we've got an example of that. One man from the Palisades area searched for his dog Oreo for 5 long days before this.
Hi, Marble! How's the fire? Oh, honey! Oh, honey!
I hadn't seen that yet. I hadn't seen it. God, how wonderful.
Heartbreaking. So lovely.
Casey wasn't home when the evacuation order came in, so didn't know what had happened to his dogs, Tika, Taka and Oreo. And with help from firefighters, they now are all back together. Well, one wonderful story of positive reunion from the otherwise devastation throughout.
Just see the love there in that dog and that owner.
Yeah, God, it's so emotional. But sadly, there's not been too many of those. I think we're going to play it again, actually.
Yeah,
Why not?
I think there's no better connection, is there, than a dog and its owner.
Hi, Boo-Boo! How's the fire? Oh, honey! Oh, honey! Oh, my God, you're alive! You're alive!
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, more, of course, ongoing coverage from Sky News throughout the day and The Breakfast Show on the latest situation in Los Angeles. Now, Keir Starmer is under growing pressure to sack Anti-Corruption Minister Tulip Siddiq over allegations about her family finances. The allegations centre on links between the MP and the political allies of her aunt, the former Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina. Ms Siddiq currently rents a £2 million house in North London owned by a businessman with reported links to Sheikh Hasina's Awami League party. She also owns a flat in central London that the Financial Times reports was gifted to her by an ally of her aunt. And she was registered as living at another London property that was transferred to her sister in 2009 by a lawyer who has represented Sheikh Hasina's government. Well, this morning we heard from the government and the opposition on the row and those calls for Siddiq to resign.
I think she's done the right thing by referring herself to the independent advisor. Let him look through all this. He's independent. I'm not independent. I'm a member of the cabinet. Let the independent advisor, whose job it is to do this, look at these things and let us see what he's got to say once he's done that.
I think it's a pretty extraordinary situation to find ourselves in, where we have the admittedly interim head of state of a very important partner nation, Bangladesh, being so clear in the Sunday Times as accusing the anti-corruption minister of very serious corruption. You can hide behind the legal process if you like, or you can show leadership. I do wish Keir Starmer would sometimes show some leadership.
Let's get more with our political correspondent, Serena Barker-Sin, who's here to discuss this. Serena, this has been building for a little while. These things don't tend to go away quietly, but is there legitimacy for what Pat McFadden was saying, that this is being considered by the independent ethics advisor? It's time to wait for that report.
I think it's a bit of both. As you say, these things were known before Keir Starmer was elected, before even Tulip Siddiq was in the government. But look, it's awkward. The anti-corruption minister is now potentially linked to corruption herself, albeit in a different country. So it's properties that she lived in are connected to allies of the ousted former Bangladeshi government. As you say, the Tories are saying she should go. It should be about optics and being seen to be completely transparent. The government say, hang on, let's wait for this independent investigation. But even with that, there's still questions. What rules is she meant to have been? Is she meant to have been broken? What are they investigating? They're still not really clear about that. They're not clear about what the Prime Minister knew. Pat McFadden wouldn't ask about what conversations would happen. So I think there's still a lack of transparency over even the process of this investigation. But I think that is what will happen. The government do want to let that conclude. Meanwhile, I don't think this is going away. The Tories are banging that drum that she should go, and perhaps the political pressure might be too much.
Serena, as always, thanks so much. Time now for all of the day's other stories. Leah's got those for us.
Thank you, Wilfred. We're going to start in Aberdeen because police divers there have been deployed to the River Dee in the search for two sisters who disappeared in the city. This was about 5 days ago. So 32-year-olds Eliza and Henrietta Hurst were last seen on CCTV after leaving their home on Tuesday afternoon. Police marine units have been patrolling the river and divers searching underwater, of course, and specialist teams with police search dogs are also trying to trace the pair. 3 people have been killed after an avalanche hit a group of 5 skiers in Italy's northern Piedmont region. The 2 survivors have been airlifted to hospital. An alert had been issued in the area above 2,000 metres, warning of considerable damage of avalanche. The wanted star, Max George, you can see there, has revealed he's got to have a lung biopsy. This is weeks after having a pacemaker fitted. The 36-year-old says he hopes this biopsy will shed light on his heart problems. Hundreds of people gathered in Liverpool for the vigil for drag icon, the Vivienne, also known as James Lee Williams. St George's Hall was lit up in green to honour their role in The Wizard of Oz. Vivienne rose to fame following her win on a Drag Race UK in 2019, and he died aged 32. A new memorial is being unveiled, marking 25 years since the removal of the ban on homosexuality in the military. Gay servicemen were given dishonourable discharge and received criminal convictions. I will be speaking to a Falklands veteran who was dismissed in 1993 because of his sexuality, and that's from about 8:30 this morning.
We do have some breaking news to bring you. We were building up to the launch of the Amazon owner Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin rocket, and it's just been postponed for, we don't know exactly how long, but it won't be today. And delighted to say that bringing back on set to discuss the significance of this is Sinead O'Sullivan, Professor of Astrophysics. Sinead, so I guess we've seen quite a few delays over the course of the morning. They've now taken the decision to postpone it for longer. Is that a big blow to Blue Origin, Jeff Bezos, or do these things happen?
These things happen. These things happen all the time. Numerous reasons as to why. I think the important thing today is that they didn't launch prematurely. Rockets are extremely expensive. Unfortunately, they have a couple of days of a launch window left. Weather is not super favourable moving forward. SpaceX has launch preference from the 15th and 2 days onwards, so it's going to become a little bit trickier for them to launch in the kind of immediate future. The orbit that they're trying to get the rocket payload into is a very niche orbit. So that window won't come around again for a while. So it is a blow for people who are expecting and really excited to see, is there going to be a competitor to SpaceX in the near term? I think it will happen, just not probably today.
The technicalities that we're hearing is that there were some abnormalities during the mission countdown. Is that quite normal then, for it to be very, very last minute?
Yeah, because it's not until, you can do dry and wet rehearsal for launch, right? And cryogenically, these systems are very complex. Even during, while we've been waiting for the launch to happen, we've seen cryogenic boil off, all this kind of what looks like steam coming off that changes the pressure, changes the temperature, the nominal conditions of the rocket, making it harder when you eventually do go to launch to do that. And so during countdown, I guess, is when you start to really test the engines. 4 million pounds of thrust through 7 engines. You're starting to see real time some of the data that the rocket is producing. So from the perspective of Blue Origin, this is all success in that you have this data that you didn't have before. For viewers like us who are hoping to see such a massive structure being launched to space, it's more disappointing.
Just to wrap things up, Sinead, for our viewers, what exactly, what stage is Blue Origin at with its space technology compared to SpaceX or compared to others? Is SpaceX the clear leader? Is Blue Origin close behind or far behind?
Yeah, the technology is very similar. The architecture that both rockets propose is quite similar. SpaceX clearly has a huge advantage when it comes to what they've commercialized so far. The number of launches that they've, launched is greater than 0, which is kind of where Blue Origin is at the minute. Blue Origin are trying to get from 0 to 1 launch a month one launch a month, and then next year to double that, which is extraordinarily ambitious, but the hope is that with a similar technology to SpaceX that they can catch up kind of quickly. There is, in this game, a second mover advantage, which is something that Elon Musk is going to start to be looking out for.
I have to say, Professor, I find this so fascinating, like this modern age space race. You know, because this would have been a really big moment for Jeff Bezos, trying to nip on the heels of Elon Musk.
Yeah, I mean, this launch in particular has been more than a decade in the making. Yeah, it's not only Jeff Bezos that was kind of looking at this. I think, again, we discussed earlier, some of the foreign leaders, you know, some of the nation states that are hoping to launch sensitive defense satellites are probably looking at this and thinking, okay, it's nice to have a second option if we don't want to go with SpaceX. If we feel like Elon Musk is, you know, potentially becoming a national security issue, is there an alternative? These are the conversations that we're hearing in agencies outside of the US and through defense departments. And so I think a lot of people were watching what we were hoping was going to be an exciting launch today and wondering, is competition in the space industry actually going to change some of the geopolitical dynamics that we're seeing?
Professor, great stuff. Thanks so much for joining us. So that launch has been temporarily delayed, but it won't be today. We'll update you when we know when it will be. Now, bereaved parents could soon be given access to their children's social media. The campaign's been led by the mother of a teenager, Jules Sweeney, who's still searching for answers nearly 3 years after her son's death. Our political correspondent, Tamara Cohen, has this report.
The pain in my heart about not knowing what happened that night and why is incredibly hard.
It's coming up to 3 years since 14-year-old Jules was found dead in his bedroom at home, and his mother is no closer to knowing why. But she believes his online activity could hold crucial clues.
The day he died, he had been playing football that day with a group of friends. He was always on his bike, so it wasn't like he was constantly in his room on his own.
Today we're going to be testing the Butterkers Toffee Crunchy Popcorn.
I just can't believe we all missed depression. I have always said I don't know it's social media. It's always been my gut feeling, but I want the right to know.
With help from her son's friends, she's managed to guess his password and get into some of his accounts, but it's not a full picture.
He did do an awful lot of challenges, which actually at the time we thought they were just silly, viral challenges. I never knew about some of the more dangerous ones. The police didn't ask for the data from social media companies. The detective didn't even find out he had more than one account, more than one TikTok and Instagram account.
Gloucestershire Police said they did review Jules's phone but can't see all personal accounts unless investigating a criminal offence. She started a petition to call for bereaved parents to have full access to a child's social media history, which has attracted more than 120,000 signatures and will be debated by MPs. She's also preparing to take a case to the High Court to get answers at huge expense.
The solicitors quoted $86,000 to pay for barristers' legal fees, court costs, which is out of most people's reach.
Her lawyer has helped other bereaved families get data, but it's not easy.
Getting that information is incredibly difficult. It's a moving target. The social media companies sort of take this line that it's not for us, it's not our responsibility, which I think is, it makes for a very challenging set of circumstances, and it's not right.
The government say a new data protection bill will order tech companies to retain content when a child dies for a coroner to access, but not a child's parents. Ellen fears it may still leave families looking for answers. Tamara Cohen, Sky News, Cheltenham.
Sky News has contacted Meta, which owns Instagram, also TikTok and Snapchat, and none of those platforms provided an on-the-record response, but all are understood to have been in contact with Jules's family. Now, police are continuing their search around the River Dee for two sisters who disappeared from Aberdeen last week. Eliza and Henrietta Hutst, both 32, were last seen on CCTV in the city's Market Street, having left home during the early hours of Tuesday morning. We're joined now by Nusrit Mehtab, a former superintendent at the Met, to share her views on this. So what do we know about the two individuals and exactly how and when they went missing?
Well, good morning. So they went missing on Tuesday morning, and the last sightings on CCTV were at 2 a.m. in the morning, 7th of January, and they were walking towards Victoria Street on the Aberdeen Boat Club, which is on the River Dee. This is very unusual because the brother of these two women has said that this is very unusual. There was nothing to indicate that there was anything wrong. They're part of a set of triplets, and they'd spoken to the other sister in Hungary. Nothing to indicate it, but they haven't been seen since. And they haven't actually left the area either. So the police focus of the investigation has been, as you quite rightly said, the River Dee, and has been extended now to the Port of Aberdeen as well.
I mean, how difficult is it when a river like this is involved? Cold temperatures, of course, as well.
Very challenging, and that's what's taking so long, because temperatures have plummeted -18, -14. But there's been extensive resources invested in this, and you mentioned some of them: the underwater search unit, marine unit, helicopters, drones, and they've looked at all through CCTV. They're looking at the digital footprint of these women, looking at their mobile phones, computers, and speaking to family and friends. This is really quite, distressing period for everybody. But anything, and the most important element is members of the public, because they may hold a key to something, even if the information is really small, because police can't really do it without the public. And you can see from that the search is really difficult, challenging, because there's, ice in aspects of the river. But Police Scotland have really invested a lot of resources. They've handled this well. It's a good investigation. They will be working with, they'll have one main working hypothesis, but nothing is off the table. And they'll be reviewing this continuously, because this is high risk. And high risk is defined when a person goes missing. There's a process that's triggered, and there's a continuum of risk based on, risk to harm. And it goes from low, medium, and high risk. High risk is where there's serious risk to somebody's life. And because of the circumstances and the temperatures, this will be classified as high risk.
And just finally, Nusrit, I mean, you mentioned there that police would welcome any information. What is the exact advice to the public at the moment on this? And presumably at the same time, they don't want anyone trying to search themselves, given the dangers around that river.
Yeah, absolutely. This is about, if you've seen them or you've got any information, then please ring 101, quoting a number, and give that information. Also, they've asked businesses around the area to check for their CCTV, check their dash cam. Anything would help, but certainly not going to the river and not getting involved in search. That would just hinder the investigation.
Nusrit Mehtab, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, private car park operators have promised to change their rules so that drivers aren't penalised if they fail to pay within 5 minutes. So, Molly Malone is here to tell us a bit more on this and what's leading to the change in these rules. I have to say, I didn't know that there was a 5-minute thing in the first place. That sounds very punitive.
Well, yeah, and actually you're right to be confused about it, because in some places it's 5 minutes, other places it's 10 minutes, and it all sort of depends on the company and where you're at in the country. But the particular jeopardy around the kind of window of time where you can pay for your parking ticket has come off the back of a case from a woman called Rosie Hudson in Derby. She got 10 fines within the space of several days when she was heading in to this private car park. Those fines stacked up to nearly £2,000. She went to court, and it's now sort of, that's the kind of jeopardy of this rule, if you like. And so now these leading kind of industry bodies are re-looking at the situation. They've launched earlier in the year this panel to kind of look at certain aspects, so a cap on fines, potentially fairer appeal system, and stopping the use of aggressive language on tickets. But they say they want to specifically look at the pay aspect of it, and that 5-minute or 10-minute window in February 2025 off the back of this case. But of course, we know she's not the only one, right? They say on average, the RAC, 41,000 a day of these tickets are issued by private companies. And when I say private companies, I mean places like Excel or your NCP car park. It is confusing, isn't it? There's a massive kind of parking sector, but they're certainly trying to smarten up their act and change things, they say, to make things better for what they call genuine sort of motorists.
But what's so important, isn't it, for people at home, if they do get one of those letters through the post, is to, and there is legal ground, to fight it.
Yeah.
I've had an incident where I went into an NCP, but they didn't clock me coming out.
Yeah.
And I got sent a fine.
You're still there. You owe them a fortune.
Yeah, it happens a lot. And I think, obviously, as you were saying earlier, sometimes you just pay it and hope for the best. But actually, sometimes the actual general advice is to pay it and then fight it. But it's whether people actually go and do that.
It's interesting thinking about it, because I guess as the ticketing becomes more advanced, you have to do it on your phone, it's all digital. Presumably there's a way, which is sort of what happens with the congestion charge in London, where it's auto-pay.
Yeah.
And then they miss out altogether on the fines. I bet the fines is quite a high portion of revenue, as opposed to the initial fees.
Yeah. Well, given
so
the
be careful what you
numbers.
wish for on the technology thing, because it might come back to hurt them.
Hurt them, yeah.
Yeah, as we discussed last hour, I like the old...
I prefer the coins and getting
and
a
then
little
you go
ticket.
back, you put the ticket back in. Oh,
At
I'm
least
off
you
shopping.
know it's the physicality.
We've only got 2 hours, got to be quick.
It's the physicality of doing it, though, right? And you convince yourself, I can see the ticket, I've done it. Sometimes on your phone, you forget about it.
And trying to log on to different
confusing.
types of apps. It's way too confusing for me. I don't have time for it.
It's tough out there.
It is indeed. I mean, it's tough for, changing light bulbs pretty tough.
Let's address that later on.
Let's address that later. I think you're going to beef up your defence a little
Yeah,
bit.
right. I've got time.
We're going to take a quick break here on Sky News Breakfast, and when we come back, we're going to be talking about a new monument for the Lost Legion. We'll hear from a Falklands veteran who was dismissed in the 90s because of his sexuality. Plus, millions of Hindus gather in India for the world's largest religious festival. That and much more still to come.
Mayhem in the Middle East, rippling in America's West.
Get back! Get back!
The resolve of these protesters is now being seriously tested. I saw police being forceful, pushing young men and women to the ground as they made almost 100 arrests.
None of this is a peaceful protest.
I'm Martha Kellner and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Los Angeles. How are you feeling?
I am angry. It is an anti-woman agenda.
Sky News, get the full story first. Will the cold affect your voters?
Well, we have a lot of tremendous support, but it's nasty out there.
Can you beat Donald Trump, Governor? President Biden, do you trust President Xi? President Biden says that this meeting went well. He said real progress was made on a whole host of issues. Will your candidates win?
I hope so. I think they will. I think they're great candidates.
There's no doubt that Kamala Harris and her team are harnessing the power of social media. Do you think Kamala is brat?
Kamala's brat.
Are you scared?
Yeah, we were scared. It was terrible. Strong wind, building tearing down.
As them say, our God works, so we can't do nothing.
The people here know that worse storms may well be on their way. Free, wherever you get your news.
Excited. I've had severe nightmares of these people coming in and just taking me in the middle of the night.
Ghislaine Maxwell has pleaded not guilty to all 6 charges against her. Mum, how are you feeling today?
Jeffrey said, you answer to Ghislaine, you just don't cross her.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. A new start to Sunday.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
I'm James Matthews and I'm Sky's US correspondent, based here in Washington, D.C. Donald Trump, it would appear, is about to learn his fate. There's no doubting the strength of this hurricane as it roars through. Sky News, get the full story first. Do you fear a 4th indictment? Is it a draw?
He's from Sky News. He's from Sky News. He's entitled to ask me questions.
Ooh, Welcome back to Breakfast this Monday morning. Well, coming up, our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates, here with all of the very latest political news here in Westminster. But first, a reminder of all of the day's top stories. Leah's got those for us.
Thank you so much, Wilfred. Authorities in Los Angeles say wildfires have now claimed the lives of 24 people. The Blue Origin space company owned by Jeff Bezos has postponed the launch of its New Glenn rocket for a second time. The rocket was due to launch at 6 o'clock this morning, but it was pushed back before ultimately being scrapped. No third attempt has been scheduled just yet. So Keir Starmer is under growing pressure to sack Anti-Corruption Minister Tulip Siddiq over allegations about her family finances. Government Minister Pat McFadden told this programme she's done the right thing by referring herself to the independent ethics advisor. And MPs are to debate a change to the law proposed by a bereaved mother who wants parents to get access to children's social media.
Leah, great stuff, thank you. So, lots of pressure on Tulip Siddiq on a day when all her boss wants to talk about is AI. Let's discuss all of this with our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates, co-host of the podcast Politics and Jack and Sam's. And Jack,
as you can see, it's an empty chair. It's a very empty chair.
Well, and talk us through why. Where's Jack?
This morning was our last ever Politics at Jack and Sam's. Yes, I know, it's quite sad. Jack has got one of the best jobs in journalism. He really has. He has been, at almost no notice, flown out to Washington to be the star, the writer, the editor of the Washington, D.C. playbook. Now, some viewers will be familiar.
At Politico, where he was.
Exactly. There's a Politico product called Playbook. It's a morning email for Politico nerds, politics nerds, and there's one in London for everyone who likes Westminster politics. Well, there's an even bigger one in Washington, D.C., and he has gone. He will be a star. He will be an even bigger star than we are used to. But the consequence for that is this empty chair from today.
Well, so you are very pleased for him, despite...
Just to clarify.
No, I am absolutely thrilled. It is one of the best jobs in the world if you're a journalist. It really is. And he deserves it. He's a brilliant writer, brilliant thinker, brilliant political analyst. So, yeah.
So what's happening to
we're going to miss him.
Politics at Sam's?
So we're building this plane while we're in the air. You are still going to get a politics podcast that gives you everything you need to know about the day ahead in British politics with a variety of voices. Maybe not quite tomorrow. It might start the next day as we work out things like title. But we will provide this service, don't you worry, in the same place that you got it before.
And you still say subscribe to the same thing. You still get your 20-minute download.
Exactly.
And
all of
Sam's amazing insight, which we're going to pick your brain on now as well, whilst we've got you, because lots of factors to get to. The first thing is on the Tulip Siddiq debate. It was really interesting having both sides on again this morning, Pat McFadden and Tom Tugendhat. And, this has been referred to the independent advisor who's investigating it. That's Pat McFadden's answer. Wait for that. Obviously, the opposition is saying, no, you've got to resign now. How is this likely to ultimately settle down? Does the government have time to say we wait for the independent advisors?
I have to say, first of all, it doesn't look good for Tulip Siddiq. She's the City Minister. She's the Anti-Corruption Minister as well. That's her role in the Treasury. But it's worth just pausing because in quite a lot of the reporting, we sort of skate over the what she's done wrong bit of it. Because actually, if I'm being honest, it's ever so slightly less clear or unclear to me. So she has lived in a series of properties that are linked to either her aunt, the former Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, or somebody associated with her political party. Now, some of those properties, the new Sheikh Hasina's replacement, the Bangladesh Prime Minister, has said should be part of the sort of big anti-corruption investigation that is going on right now in that country following her departure. In of itself, it's not clear that that breaches the ministerial code, which is the test that the independent regulator, the independent ministerial investigator would have to find in order to insist that she goes. So the question is, has there been something along the way that she hasn't declared? Has there been something that she should have said when she came into government that she didn't? Did she tell the full truth to the media early on? Is that a sackable offence? The actual offence that might mean she loses her job, well, actually, I'm struggling to see what that is. But the bottom line is, if this is a government minister with anti-corruption in their sort of job description, living in properties that are the proceeds of something untoward, then that is a big, big political problem. They'll want to do something about it. But very precisely what the thing is she might be sacked for is a little unclear to me.
OK. We've doorstepped her this morning, actually, our colleagues here, and she's just not really given much of a response. What's your hunch, Sam? Do you think by the end of the day, the end of the week, she'll still be in that position?
I mean, as I say, I think I don't think it's looking good for her. But it is this business of specifically what did she do wrong versus the political pain that this government can take. Look, she's not the only minister in the Treasury to be feeling the heat at the moment, and arguably her boss is having a much grimmer time on a much bigger scale. Maybe that is a distraction. Maybe that's a reason why she goes sooner, because they want to focus on that. But you can see Chilitsi there on.
She said good
screen.
morning. So that was the sum total of that. But so let's talk about Rachel Reeves's troubles at the moment. I mean, maybe we'll come to. I was going to ask about China first, but I think you're referring, in fact, to borrowing costs. They've ticked up a smidgen this morning, but we're basically where we were. 10-year yield 4.89% at the moment. Is that pressure going to ease? Is there going to be an intervention before the spring statement? What are we looking at?
It depends what happens next. So borrowing costs have gone up a little bit. Actually, in a funny way, Rachel Reeves is now slightly at the mercy of Donald Trump. You know, we've got the new returning US president coming back in a week. What's his economic policy going to look like? And what's that going to do to the global market? And what's that going to do to Rachel Reeves? Let me explain. If Donald Trump massively cuts taxes and massively raises spending, then in some circumstances, there's a chance that that could push up inflation, and global inflation could go up, and then there could be further pressure on Rachel Reeves, and effectively the amount of headroom that she's got drops even further and even further, well below zero. I think that between now and March the 26th, the scale of the problem is still something that we don't know about. If she misses her targets by 1 or 2 billion, then there'll be ways with dealing with that. If she's missing her targets by 10, 15, 20 billion, that's a different order of magnitude. But I have to say, Wilf, this whole discussion, in some senses, is nuts, and she's to blame for that. Why? Because she has... It's not that she has chosen difficult to achieve fiscal rules, though she has. She's chosen very precise and exacting fiscal rules that require a prediction of what's going to happen to the economy in 2029. Now, lots of bits of that forecast and prediction are just sort of slightly subject to vast margins of error, but we're all having to guess 1 billion here, 1 billion there. She's tied herself to the most ridiculous yardstick. And while there is a legitimate big picture argument, she's made her own life much more difficult by basically creating, through the nature of her fiscal rules, this argument about 1 billion here and 1 billion there, 5 years out, which she needn't have done, copying the Tories, who also subjected themselves to the same thing, and then not giving herself much wiggle room when there is so much uncertainty about the world and domestic economy. I mean, why didn't anyone tell her not to?
Sam, very interesting stuff. We will keep an eye on it. I know you will, for us on a day where actually borrowing costs are sort of flat, but still on their recently elevated level. The pound, though, down again against the US dollar, below 122, and the FTSE 100 is down 0.4% this morning, Sam. Great stuff. And most importantly, the RSS feed does not change to stay subscribed to...
That's right.
Title to be confirmed podcast.
Yes.
But most importantly, with all of the insights, we're very pleased for Jack, but the most important insights remain with Sam every morning for 20 minutes or so.
He's a traitor.
Well, he'll be able to report for us on what's going to happen to borrowing costs based on, as you said, Donald Trump's economic policy. Sam Coates, thank you. Now, it's going to be an emotional day for many when a memorial will be unveiled, marking 25 years since the homosexuality ban in the military was lifted. Joining us now to tell his remarkable story, Navy veteran Joe Ousalice. Thanks so much for joining us, Joe. Just give us some of the background. First of all, when did you serve? How did you serve? And ultimately, how did your service come to an end?
Good morning to you. I joined up in 1976 and I was dismissed in 1993 after several attempts by the armed forces to dismiss me. Eventually, it led to a court-martial in which a fabricated charge was made against me, plus a second charge of conduct prejudicial to good order and naval discipline. The first charge I was found not guilty, but I was found guilty of the second charge, which it's a ridiculous situation to be in. I was stripped of my rank, I had my medals taken off me, and I was discharged from the armed forces. Now, during my 18 years serving, I served in the Falklands, 6 tours of duty in Northern Ireland, and 2 trips abroad to the Middle East.
It's just, I mean, thank you for your service, Joe, first and foremost. I mean, secondly, you were investigated multiple times for your sexuality. I mean, what was that process like? It just sounds something of a, I don't know, bygone era for sure, but for something that this country would surely not do, and it's so recent.
It certainly is something from a bygone era. It's on a par with the Stasi. They do covert operations. They wait till you're not in your room. That's if you're based on a show base, and then they go checking through all your mail. They check your bed for any stains in case you've had anybody sleeping with you. And this is the way they go ahead.
Joe, what got you through that time? Because you wouldn't have had support from higher up in the Navy at that point.
Well, I do believe that my religion and the fact that I'm a northerner, and we made stern stuff up north, absolutely. And I was determined not to allow this to take over. I was very good at my job. Every one of my write-ups was VG superior, so I refused to give in to it.
And Joe, when the ban was lifted 25 years ago, which obviously is what we're marking with this this conversation, I guess, how did that make you feel?
Initially, I thought it was brilliant, but I think it's ridiculous when you think that they lifted a ban, and yet here I was, another 3 years still fighting them to try and get my medals back. Now, they say that they're not homophobic anymore, and yet there they were. I was bouncing off brick walls every time I wrote to them. Eventually, I had to get Liberty involved, and we took the Ministry of Defence to the High Courts. I turned the land around, and I got all these medals back for all these people who've been treated not too dissimilar to myself. Now,
when did that finally happen?
Yeah, that has happened. Yes, that was 2 years ago when Ben Ainslie, the Defence Minister for the Conservatives, was in power. And 2 years afterwards, they've agreed to give us all pensions. And I'm still waiting for that now. I've just had a conviction/caution letter from the Ministry of Defence telling me that I've been disregarded in accordance with Chapter 4 of Part 5 of the Protection of Freedoms Act 2012. This means that I am now to be treated for all purposes in law as someone who has not been convicted or cautioned of this offence.
So I understood you had got your pension. You're still waiting for your pension payment?
Yes, but this is now 2 years since Ben Wallace showed me we would get it.
What do you want to see happen, Joe? Because this seems wild that you're having to still go through this.
Well, I've been fighting all this time. I've had a pacemaker fitted since I left the armed forces. I've had prostate cancer, lung cancer, and I've recently had my right-hand kidney removed from cancer. And I'm determined I'm not going to give in until this is all resolved.
Well, Joe, I mean, just to round things off, I guess the 25-year anniversary of the ban being lifted and with it the unveiling of this statue, I guess it was meant to be, presumably, a celebration of the progress. It doesn't sound like you think, whether it's addressing past grievances or moving forward, the overall sentiment from the MOD towards people like you, that we're yet in a place to be celebrating.
I'm sure they have changed the ways with people serving now, and the statue which has been made is a beautiful statue. It stands for everything we've fought for, and they've acknowledged everything we've been through, but yet here we are still waiting for repatriation settlement. I'm still waiting for the package which they've assured me would be sent to me, or I have to go for an official meeting to have it returned to me, in which they'll return my rank and everything else that's owed to me.
Well, Joe, will you keep us posted?
Yes, indeed I will.
Well, thank you for joining us today, and much more importantly to that, thank you for your service, Joe.
Yes, thank you very much.
Joe Ousalice, the Navy veteran there. Now to the world's largest religious event, which kicks off in India today. It's held once every 12 years, draws crowds of 400 million Hindu pilgrims. Let's go live to our India correspondent, Neville Lazarus. He joins us now from the northern state of Uttar Pradesh. Neville, break it down, the scale of what we're expecting.
Well, today is the beginning of this 45-day celebration, which the government estimates 400 million pilgrims, devotees will descend on the banks of the holy river Ganga and Yamuna. They'll converge here. You can see behind me for miles on, people have come here for self-purification. They take a holy dip in the Ganga, cleansing them. But it is also a massive tent city. It's about 10,000 acres wide, this whole area. There are 160,000 tents being pitched up. About 400 kilometers of temporary roads have been set up, 200 kilometers of sewage lines, 150,000 toilets being set up in this place, so for about $815 million that was been spent on this. And you can see the number of people. There are activists who are concerned about this large number in terms of pollution, in terms of health risk, but also it is faith that has brought them all here on the banks.
Neville, thanks so much. Neville Lazarus there for us. Still to come here on The Breakfast Show, calls for bereaved parents to be given access to their children's social media. We'll hear from one mum supporting the move. That's next.
Conflict.
They keep telling us that they want aid.
And this is what's left of it.
Tanks, heavy vehicle.
Why only in America?
People want their country to work.
Just want a job in a normal life.
Why are these homes empty?
I want you to be honest with people.
That has happened within minutes.
Sky News, the full story first. Free wherever you get your news.
We've come to one of Moscow's Cold War bunkers. It was built as a top-secret command centre.
Being here really feels like you're stepping back in time. I'm Ivor Bennett, Sky's Moscow correspondent. A show of military might and menace. Courage, bravery and sacrifice will win the day.
It's a new subject. They'll learn about combat drones and some how to handle a Kalashnikov.
The Kremlin continues to put forward its own version of events, both present and past.
There's no mention of the fact that Russia invaded its neighbour. That's rewriting history, isn't it?
Now we have to read it carefully.
Vladimir Putin put forward his plan for a ceasefire in Ukraine, telling Kiev, pull out of your eastern territories and the war will end. Why should the West trust you?
Frankly, I don't care whether the West trusts us or not.
Vladimir Putin is already the Kremlin's longest-serving leader since Stalin. The question is, what will a fifth Putin term mean for Russia and the world?
Why do you support Vladimir Putin, Mr. Segal?
I can't answer questions that stupid.
I've watched Vladimir Putin attempt to create a new world order.
The St. Petersburg Economic Forum was the backdrop to Vladimir Putin's latest verbal volley that Russia could send missiles to other nations to target the West.
Ambassador, I wonder, shall we have a quick word for Sky News?
Is the West right? Are you fueling Russia's war machine?
Swedish media, oh my God, you're not afraid of being here.
American journalist Evan Gershkovich is on trial here, but was first on display.
Russia says Evan Gershkovich was caught red-handed, but has never produced any evidence to back that up. Sky News. Get the full story first.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back. Bereaved parents could soon be given access to their children's social media. MPs will debate the issue later today. The campaign's been led by the mother of a teenager, Jules Sweeney, who is still searching for answers nearly 3 years after her son's death. Lisa Kennevan, whose son Isaac is believed to have died after taking part in a social media challenge, joins us now. Thanks so much for joining us, Lisa. I mean, first and foremost, if you don't mind, just remind our viewers of the tragedy that you've had to endure and what happened, well, what you know about what happened to your son Isaac.
Well, my son died March 2022, and we believe it was due to an online challenge. Our world has changed. It's no parent should have to go through this tragedy. So we have video evidence as well that Isaac did such act, and so we just are just striving to, put all the pieces together. Like, what did he see? What spurred him on to do such a evil act? So, like all of the bereaved parents, we just want answers.
And you believe those answers will be contained in his social media accounts?
We'd like to have that concluded. Like, at the moment we're in limbo. There may not be anything there, but to have that opportunity to seek if anything is there, that's surely a parent's right in these cases.
And that is what you've been campaigning for and will be debated today.
Yeah, and Ellen, has been fighting tirelessly to get this far. I mean, last year, I think she set up the petition. Within a week, there was 115,000 signatures, which is absolutely amazing. And to be in that position now, to be debated in Parliament, it's groundbreaking.
It seems on the surface of it, particularly given the awful, tragic context, a very reasonable thing. Should it be much further and more widespread than that? Should it be something that is a sort of rule of thumb, even without tragedy?
In an event of a child's death, it should be automatic that police or coroners should have that power to get the data from these platforms. It seems that, in our instance, in our case, and for many other, especially like Velen, they didn't go and ask for that information. You were just left in limbo. You were just, that you're pushed through so quickly for the inquest, and you don't have time to actually have that moment sink in that, my goodness, what actually happened to my child? And then when your inquest is closed and you get clarity and you think, hang on a minute, I need answers here. And then it's too late. And then you have to go through the high courts to open up your inquest, which costs thousands and thousands of pounds. So this should be basically a compulsory act. This should actually be something that is automatic in the instance of a child's death, which does not have any explanations.
And what about more broadly, Lisa? I mean, in Australia, for example, they banned social media for under 16s. Is that something that you think has merit to it?
I mean, I'm not up for banning stuff as such, but there is an ability where age verification should come in. That seems common sense to me. Certain sites which are adult related, you literally can just tick a box saying that you're 18. So age verification should be implemented straight away. And I think social media platforms should be having an age limit of at least 14 plus. At the moment, it's too easy for a child to get around these platforms. You know, I've witnessed it myself, you know, and I was part of a documentary where two presenters actually got two brand new mobile phones and pretended they were an underage child, and the content that came through was shocking. Within 4 hours, they were being subjected to not very pleasant content. So it does need to be all tightened up, and, you know, with corporate statements from TikTok that they're doing their very, very best not to have this content allowed on their platforms. Again, I find that completely insulting to a parent that's lost a child, because they clearly are allowing this content on their platforms.
And just finally, Lisa, I mean, this is, again, a broad point, and understand if you don't want to engage on it specifically, but recently Mark Zuckerberg, the owner of Facebook and Instagram, has said they're going to reduce the amount of fact-checking on their platform. Is that something that you think is foolhardy as it relates to children?
I mean, children, they're like sponges. They have too much, I think, too much information on their shoulders. You know, it's proven that their brain doesn't fully develop till at the age of 25, and like, they've been bombarded with stuff. I think information overload, incorrect information is very, very dangerous for a child, and I'm not fully up to speed with it at the moment, but I just feel that too many walls are coming down too quickly, and it's going to be affecting a lot of children and vulnerable young adults.
Lisa, we really thank you for joining us today, Lisa Canavan, and of course we'll continue to monitor this story. And on Sky News, we'll have live this afternoon that debate in Parliament. We're going to take a quick break here on Sky News Breakfast. We'll be back with all of today's top stories in just a couple of minutes.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. A new start to Sunday.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Good morning to you. It's 9 o'clock. On today's show, at least 24 people are now confirmed to have died in wildfires in Los Angeles.
Plus, the anti-corruption minister accused of benefiting from corruption. The Tories tell this programme Tulip Sadiq should be sacked.
And we discuss homeschooling. Is it time for tougher regulations? We'll speak to a mum of 4 educating all of her kids.
It's Monday, the 13th of January. Your headlines. A warning that the California wildfires could be the costliest disaster in US history, destroying homes, businesses and places of worship.
I announced my retirement on Sunday, and then the church burned to the ground on Tuesday.
Among the horror, some hope as a California man is reunited with his dog after 5 days apart in the fires.
Will you resign?
Tulip Sadiq, will you resign today?
Good morning.
What are your campaign leaflets doing in your Arts Palace?
How can you do that anti-corruption minister when you're doing
Also ahead, the Prime Minister faces growing calls to sack his anti-corruption minister, Tulip Sadiq, over her family's finances. And millions of Hindus gather in India for the world's largest religious festival. A very good morning to you. At least 24 people are now confirmed to have been killed by wildfires in Los Angeles. The state's governor says it could be the costliest disaster in US history, and firefighters are scrambling to get the fires under control before high winds are forecast to return. Our correspondent, David Blevins, has this report for us from LA.
They are desperate for hope, but the people and communities displaced by wildfires have lost everything.
It's my home church. It's my everything church.
Another congregation opened its doors to Altadena Community Church.
We're still finding out where people fled to. And so a chance to get together. It's a long drive out, but it's worth it because we need hugs. We need hugs.
The feeling of losing my church, the building is gone, it hasn't really sunk in yet.
Where do you find hope? Where does a person of faith find hope in the midst of this?
God.
1 in 3 members no longer has a home. Reverend Paul Tellstrom feels the weight of that.
We just have to get up tomorrow morning and start forward and make it happen all over. And I know people are tired. I mean, one of the difficult things is that I announced my retirement on Sunday, and then the church burned to the ground on Tuesday. How do you tell people it's going to be okay? But you know what? It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. We will do this.
A community coming together, politicians divided. President-elect Donald Trump calling Californian Democrats incompetent. This is one of the worst catastrophes in the history of our country, he posted on his Truth social media platform, adding, they just can't put out the fires. What's wrong with them? Criticism rejected by the Californian governor.
Well, I called for him to come out, take a look for himself. We want to do it in the spirit of an open hand, not a closed fist. He's the president-elect. I respect the office. I don't know what he's referring to when he talks about the Delta smelt in reservoirs. The reservoirs are completely full, the state reservoirs here in Southern California. That mis and disinformation, I don't think advantages or aids any of us.
It's an unrelenting battle. Fires still raging across Los Angeles. And looters continue to take advantage of evacuated homes. One of them arrested, dressed as a firefighter. Reinforcements have arrived from Mexico. Fire crews on the ground are exhausted, attempting to save life and property. There's a real heart attachment to places of worship, where these people have marked the milestones of their lives. But churches, mosques and synagogues also serve as community centres in these neighbourhoods, where people come when they need help. And they're gone. They're watching and waiting in hope that the worst has passed. But with warnings that the wind could strengthen again into the middle of the week, all they can do is pray. David Blevins, Sky News in Los Angeles.
Well, despite the many stories of destruction and despair from the fires, hope still remains. One man from the Palisades area of LA searched for his dog Oreo for 5 long days before this.
Hi, Marble! How's the fire? Oh, honey! Oh, honey! Oh, my God, you're alive! You're
goodness, the love, that tearful reunion, wasn't it? Casey wasn't home when the evacuation order came, so he didn't know what happened to his dogs, Tika, and Oreo. Great names, by the way. But with the help from firefighters, they're now delighted to be safely back together.
Fantastic footage, isn't it? As we both reflect on, I hadn't seen that until an hour ago, and it's just wonderful. I mean, of course, sadly, those positive stories are few and far between at the moment in the ongoing devastation. As you said, great dog names as well.
Perfect, I think,
Oreo.
yeah.
It's the British equivalent would be what? Custard cream. It doesn't have the same
No,
ring
Tiddles?
to it. Is that a biscuit?
I don't know. It sounds like a good dog name to me.
Yeah, well, OK, I see what you mean, but I was going for an American biscuit. Anyway, we digress, but we're going to continue to have much more, of course, on that ongoing story in LA, as there are forecasts for strong winds returning throughout the day and the week here on Sky News. But for now, to politics closer to home, and Sir Keir Starmer under growing pressure to sack anti-corruption Minister Tulip Siddiq over allegations about her family finances. So, well, let's just remind you of what these allegations centre on. Links between the MP and the political allies of her aunt, the former Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina. Ms Siddiq currently rents a £2 million house in North London, owned by a businessman with reported links to Sheikh Hasina's Awami League party. She also owns a central London flat that the Financial Times reports was gifted to her by an ally of her aunt. And she was registered as living at another London property that was transferred to her sister in 2009 by a lawyer who was represented Sheikh Hasina's government. We heard from the minister this morning as she was leaving her home.
Will you resign?
Tulip Siddiq, will you resign today?
Good morning.
What will your campaign leaflets doing in your aunt's palace?
How can you be that anti-corruption minister when you're being accused of corruption?
Are you history's unluckiest anti-corruption minister? What did Keir Starmer say to you today?
Well, Serena's here to discuss the significance of all of this. Obviously, not much from Tulip Siddiq this morning. What about from the government more broadly?
Well, yeah, she was smiling this morning, but I think it is awkward for the government. I mean, it's your anti-corruption minister now potentially being linked to corruption, albeit in another country. And there are a lot of properties that are linked to this ousted former Bangladeshi government, and questions still need to be answered. So you've got, on the one hand, the Conservatives saying, this looks bad, immediately she must go. I think that's quite an obvious way that they would go with that. You've got the government saying, hang on, she's referred herself to the independent standards advisor, let that investigation conclude, and then we'll take it from there. This is the government and the Tories this morning.
I think she's done the right thing by referring herself to the independent advisor. Let him look through all this. He's independent. I'm not independent. I'm a member of the cabinet. Let the independent advisor, whose job it is to do this, look at these things and let us see what he's got to say once he's done that.
I think it's a pretty extraordinary situation to find ourselves in, where we have the admittedly interim head of state of a very important partner nation, Bangladesh, being so clear in the Sunday Times as accusing the anti-corruption minister of very serious corruption. You know, you can hide behind the legal process if you like, or you can show leadership. I do wish Keir Starmer would sometimes show some leadership.
So I think there's still questions to be answered, but also about the investigation themselves. We're not sure exactly what rules Tulip Siddiq are meant to have broken, whether it was something she didn't disclose or whether she had a story changed to the press. We also don't know what the Prime Minister knew. That question is still answered. I think also the public perception is important here. She's the anti-corruption minister, and you saw with Freebies row, although no rules were technically broken, people really didn't like that. And there is this kind of assumption that the public think all politicians are the same. I think whether this goes on to the investigation and we wait for that, or whether she goes before, I think will depend on how much political pain this government can really endure.
Serena, as always, thanks so much. Let's get the latest. We're going to really zoom in on the story for you on the turmoil on the markets as business gets to grips with the after effects of the Chancellor's budget. Are we going to zoom in? Oh, we already are.
I'm here, Wilf.
Darren McCaffrey's there.
Yeah, the markets haven't been quite as dramatic as that camera shot just then.
I know.
Wilf.
That was good. We should do that more. But oh gosh, what's up next? Go for it, Darren.
They are, though, going somewhat a little bit in the wrong direction. UK government bonds, of course, went very kind of, you know, the amount the government had to pay quite a lot last week. Today, they are again essentially up 4 base points at 4.89%. That means 10-year bonds at the highest level since 2008. So still up on 30-year gilts, also up 5 base points at 5.5%, i.e. the bottom line is the cost of borrowing continues for the government to rise. That is bad news for the government. Effectively means it has to spend more of our tax money servicing that debt and may well force the government, Wilf, to make some difficult decisions in the next couple of months, I think particularly around public spending. It is also weighing quite heavily on the pound today, which has fallen again against the US dollar, down about 0.5% at $1.21. That is again at a 14-month low, also down against the euro today as well. So frankly, the economic indicators again going into a new week are not looking rosy for the government. And we've also had warnings from the CBI today talking about how the government's budget is going to drag economic growth this year. The CBI is saying that by raising taxes, it was filling in one hole, but it created another, and that is that confidence and trust from business in the government has taken a battering. So fundamentally, as I say, economically, this is not a great start to the year for the government or indeed for the UK economy. Suggestions of interest rate cuts, further interest rate cuts this year now seem to be ebbing away. And this is having a real world impact too, in the sense that residential mortgages that you may well pay for your home, they're starting to increase as well this morning. So I'd say not as dramatic moves as we'd seen last week, but at the moment, those gilt yields, the bonds, they're going in the wrong direction, and that's not good news for any of us.
Darren, great stuff. Thanks so much, Darren McCaffrey there. Time now for all of the day's other stories. Leah's got those for us.
Thank you, Wilfred. Police divers have been deployed to the River Dee in Aberdeen in the search for 2 sisters who disappeared in the city about 5 days ago. 32-year-old Eliza and Henrietta Hertz were last seen on CCTV after leaving their home. This was on Tuesday afternoon. Meanwhile, police marine units have been patrolling the river and divers searching underwater. Specialist search teams and police dogs are trying to trace the pair. Elsewhere, 3 people have been killed after an avalanche hit a group of 5 skiers in Italy's northern Piedmont region. The 2 survivors, they've been airlifted to hospital. An alert had been issued in the area above the 2,000 metres, warning of considerable danger of avalanches. The Wanted star Max George has revealed he's got to have a lung biopsy weeks after having a pacemaker fitted. The 36-year-old says he hopes the biopsy will shed light on his heart problems. Hundreds of people gathered in Liverpool for a vigil for the drag icon, the Vivienne, also known as James Lee Williams. St George's Hall was lit up in green to honour their role in The Wizard of Oz. Vivienne rose to fame following her win on Drag Race UK in 2019 and died aged 32. And a new memorial is being unveiled, marking 25 years since the removal of the ban on homosexuality in the military. Gay servicemen were given dishonourable discharge and received criminal convictions until the ban was lifted in 2000. Bereaved parents could soon be given access to their children's social media. The campaign has been led by the mother of teenager Jules Sweeney, who is still searching for answers nearly 3 years after her son's death. Our political correspondent, Tamara Cohen, has more.
The pain in my heart about not knowing what happened that night and why is incredibly hard.
It's coming up to 3 years since 14-year-old Jules was found dead in his bedroom at home, and his mother is no closer to knowing why. But she believes his online activity could hold crucial clues.
The day he died, he had been playing football that day with a group of friends. He was always on his bike, so it wasn't like he was constantly in his room on his own.
Today we're going to be testing the Butterkiss Toffee Crunchy Bubble.
I just can't believe we all missed depression. I have always said I don't know it's social media. It's always been my gut feeling, but I want the right to know.
With help from her son's friends, she's managed to guess his password and get into some of his accounts, but it's not a full picture.
He did do an awful lot of challenges, which actually at the time we thought they were just silly viral challenges. I never knew about some of the more dangerous ones. The police didn't ask for the data from social media companies. The detective didn't even find out he had more than one account, more than one TikTok and Instagram account.
Gloucestershire Police said they did review Jules's phone but can't see all personal accounts unless investigating a criminal offence. She started a petition to call for bereaved parents to have full access to a child's social media history, which has attracted more than 120,000 signatures and will be debated by MPs. She's also preparing to take a case to the High Court to get answers at huge expense.
The solicitors quoted $86,000 to pay for barristers' legal fees, court costs, which is out of most people's reach.
Her lawyer has helped other bereaved families get data, but it's not easy.
Getting that information is incredibly difficult. It's a moving target. The social media companies sort of take this line that it's not for us, it's not our responsibility, which I think is, it makes for a very challenging set of circumstances, and it's not right.
The government say a new data protection bill will order tech companies to retain content when a child dies for a coroner to access, but not a child's parents. Ellen fears it may still leave families looking for answers. Tamara Cohen, Sky News, Cheltenham.
Sky News contacted Meta, which owns Instagram as well as TikTok and Snapchat too. None of those platforms provided an on-the-record response, but all are understood to have been in contact with Jules's family.
Yeah, thank you. Now, private car parks have promised to change their rules so that drivers aren't penalised if they fail to pay within the first 5 minutes. Molly is here to tell us more, Molly, both about that rule, which I guess seems very punitive in the first instance, which I wasn't perhaps aware of, and why we're talking about this now.
Yeah, so it's complicated, isn't it? You've got this 5-minute rule to pay, you've got a 10-minute grace period, you've got private car parks, you've got council-run car parks. There's lots of different things kind of competing with each other and going on. The reason why we're talking about this 5-minute rule now and the kind of jeopardy around it is because of a particular case with a woman called Rosie Hudson in Derby. She got 10 fines in a particular car park there, amounting to nearly £2,000. She ended up going to court. The reason she was getting fined so frequently over the course of several days was because she was going into park and then having to leave the car park to pay on her phone, and she didn't have signal in the car park, so she ended up being fined. So it's brought about a kind of fresh conversation about this 5-minute rule and whether it's fair, whether it's particularly punitive, and whether it's, too short. There's lots of people that this happens to. It's worth saying that 41,000 tickets are issued a day, the RAC say. So some of them averaging £100 a ticket. You're looking at over £4 million a day in revenue for some of these private companies. So it's a lot of money, more than £3.5 million issued in just 3 months between July and September last year. So what's happening is they've got this new kind of code of conduct where they look at things like caps on fines, potentially better accounting of tech, so the fact that we're actually, a lot of the time, we're paying on apps, we're paying on our phones, we're using our mobiles, and a fairer appeal system. That existed, that was brought in back in June, but they've now established this panel to kind of oversee it, and they say that by February the 1st, we are already going to start seeing changes. Not clear what those changes will be, but this 5-minute rule is definitely something they're looking at.
But what's really important is people watching, to fight those charges that they might get if they have some legal ground. I remember the other day I got charged driving into an NCP. They didn't clock me leaving, and I got the fine. Yeah. And, you just think, well, you see the letter, you see how much you have to pay, just pay it. Yeah. But actually, it's worth fighting now and again, isn't it? Fight back on that.
Worth fighting, and also, well, the kind of rebuttal from some of the companies is, look, the signs are there, look out for them. But I guess people would say you're not always necessarily looking out for signs.
It's really quite small print, isn't it?
You're looking out for driving and what's in front of you. So yeah, just, I think, be aware of kind of what your rights are and know that you can challenge these things.
Molly, great stuff. Thanks so much. So to come here on The Breakfast Show, after a short break, we'll meet the 7-year-old girl who's received an epilepsy award for saving her mother during a seizure. An amazing story, that's coming up. And should every child go to school? We'll be talking about homeschooling and calls for tougher regulation or even a ban.
Many people have told me that God spared my life for a reason.
President for a second time.
That reason being to save our country, he said.
A remarkable moment, isn't it?
Another chance, another 4 years. The question is, what does he do with those 4 years?
Watch the inauguration of Donald Trump as he becomes president for the second time.
So help me God. Congratulations, Mr. President.
The full story, first on Sky News.
Mayhem in the Middle East, rippling in America's West.
Get back! Get back!
The resolve of these protesters is now being seriously tested. I saw police being forced or pushing young men and women to the ground as they made almost 100 arrests.
None of this is a peaceful protest.
I'm Martha Kellner and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Los Angeles. How are you feeling?
I am angry. It is an anti-woman agenda.
Sky News, get the full story first. Will the cold affect your voters?
Well, we have a lot of tremendous support, but it's nasty out there.
Can you beat Donald Trump, Governor? President Biden, do you trust President Xi? President Biden says that this meeting went well. He said real progress was made on a whole host of issues. Will your candidates win?
I hope so. I think they will. I think they're great candidates.
There's no doubt that Kamala Harris and her team are harnessing the power of social media. Do you think Kamala is brat?
Kamala's brat.
Were you scared?
Yeah, we were scared. It was terrible. Strong wind, building tearing down.
As them say, our God works, so we can't do nothing. The people here know that worse storms may well be on their way. Free, wherever you get your news.
Excited.
I've had severe nightmares of these people coming in and just taking me in the middle of the night.
Ghislaine Maxwell has pleaded not guilty to all 6 charges against her. Mum, how are you feeling today?
Jeffrey said, you answer to Ghislaine, you just don't cross her.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm James Matthews, and I'm Sky's US correspondent, based here in Washington, D.C. Donald Trump, it would appear, is about to learn his fate. There's no doubting the strength of this hurricane as it roars through. Sky News, get the full story first. Do you fear a 4th indictment?
He's from Sky News. He's from Sky News. He's entitled to ask me questions.
Welcome back. Well, a 7-year-old girl's been given an award for her quick response after her mum suddenly collapsed from having a seizure. Aisha Cox received the Epilepsy Star Award from the charity Epilepsy Action after quickly calling for help and putting a cushion under her mother's head. I'm delighted to say that we're joined now by Aisha and her mum, Lucy. A very good morning to you both. Aisha, thanks so much for joining us here on Sky News on telly.
Hi.
Very good to have you both. And Lucy, just tell us a little bit about your condition in the first place.
Well, I've had epilepsy since I was 16 years of age, so most of my life really. And Aisha's only ever known me with epilepsy, but it has in the last 3 years or so worsened somewhat. And I'm having seizures a lot more frequently. But Aisha's always been with another adult or with a friend or somebody, a family member or friend in the past. But on this occasion, we were on our own in the house. I was cooking tea, and she really had to step up.
And Aisha, so your mum has this condition. I mean, have you always felt that you need to be looking out for your mum? Well, and you really did so more than anyone could have hoped for. Tell us what happened. You saw that your mum wasn't well. How did you react?
Speak a bit louder, darling.
I tried to ring my dad on the neck.
What did you do before that?
Pillow under mum's head.
A pillow under mum's head.
You put a pillow under mum's head, didn't you? And then what did you do?
Then I turned the stove off.
Turn the stove
You
off.
turned the gas hob off and the oven. And then what did you do?
Then I tried to call Dad on Alexa.
And what happened when you called Daddy on Alexa?
I heard his phone ringing in the hall.
And then you rang Grandad.
And I rang Grandad.
On Daddy's phone, didn't you? You scrolled through Daddy's phone and found Grandad's number and phoned Grandad, didn't you?
Yeah.
Oh, Lucy, how proud are you of your girl?
Oh my goodness, yeah, it makes me quite emotional to think about it. Really, to be honest, I'm so proud of her. The problem solving of a 7-year-old is just goes beyond my belief. To be honest, it's yeah, it's amazing. I'm hugely proud of her. Yeah.
I mean, I'm so proud, I'm sure, and I guess grateful. I mean, a critical moment, Lucy.
Absolutely. I've only recently found out actually that she couldn't actually get into the kitchen because I'd fallen behind the kitchen door, and you had to force your way into the kitchen as well, didn't you? You told me in the last couple of days. So yeah. So she really, it must have been a very scary time for her, and yeah.
And Lucy, now Aisha has a very special prize. Talk to us a bit about that.
Well, she's won. I'm so happy for her because, as I said, she's only ever known me with epilepsy, and she's won Epilepsy Action Star Award, which recognises what she's done. And yeah, I'm so pleased for you because you're so worthy of it and you so deserve it for what you did for Mummy.
Aisha, was it really great to get that award? Yeah, well, you really deserve it. So well done you, and thank you, Aisha, so much for joining us. And I bet you're going to get a big hug from your mummy if you haven't already. But thank you so much for joining us. To Lucy and Aisha joining us there. What a wonderful story. I mean, do you know what? I read all the details. I didn't realise she also turned off the oven as well. What a
superstar.
The thinking to do that, and I guess the bravery as well in that moment.
And you know, we talk a lot about not having so much tech around the house, but that's when it really comes into its own, including a 2 a.m. alarm call from my 4-year-old who put it on my smart speaker.
Well, there we go.
Which is very annoying.
Very annoying, although it gets you in time for the show.
Oh, sitting around and no one else was here.
It's one of the few people that could sort of benefit from that. Still to come here on The Breakfast Show. After a short break, we'll hear concerns about homeschooling and whether it should be more strongly regulated or not. Well, welcome back to The Breakfast Show. Well, coming up, should there be more regulation around homeschooling? We'll hear from a mum educating 4 children at home and also a representative of Education Lead. But first, a reminder of all our top stories.
Thanks so much, Wilfred. Authorities in Los Angeles say wildfires have now claimed the lives of 24 people. Sir Keir Starmer is under growing pressure to sack Anti-Corruption Minister Tulip Siddiq over allegations about her family finances. Government Minister Pat McFadden told this programme she's done the right thing by referring herself to the independent adviser. MPs are to debate a change to the law proposed by a bereaved mother who wants parents to get access to their children's social media. And the Blue Origin space company owned by Jeff Bezos has postponed the launch of its New Glenn rocket for a second time. The rocket was supposed to launch at 6 o'clock this morning, but it was pushed back, ultimately being scrapped, while no third attempt has yet been scheduled.
Yeah, thank you. Now, the Education Bill is having its second reading in Parliament this week and will put into perspective homeschooling and an attempt to regulate parts of it. Delighted to say that joining us now is Jax Blunt, who's home educating her 4 children, and Beth Prescott, who is the Education Lead at the Centre for Social Justice, not from Education Lead. My mistake on that point. Very good morning to you both. Beth's here in studio, Jax down the line. Jax, I'll come to you first. So you're homeschooling. I think you've finished homeschooling 2 of your kids, and 2 you're still doing. That's must be a huge workload.
Not as much as you'd think. Yes, I have 2 children who are now adult and independent and were home educated through most of their educational years. And I have 2 children at home now who are still being home educated. The legal term is home education, elective home education, rather than homeschooling, as homeschooling brings up this idea of everybody sitting around a table, and that's not necessarily how we do it.
Why did you choose to homeschool?
I chose, actually, before I even had children. I was on a PGCE, so teacher training, and in the library there I found a book by John Holt about how children learn and how children fail, and it talks about all aspects of education and how teaching isn't necessarily the best way for people to learn. And I decided that I wanted to be able to provide an education suited independently to each of my children, and that's exactly what I did.
Stay where you are. In the studio, we're joined by Beth Prescott, Education Leader at the Centre for Social Justice. What do you make of what Jax is doing there? Because it is quite a lot to take on, but she seems to be taking it in her stride.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like Jax is doing an incredible job of home educating all her children. I think she hit the nail on the head there where she said she's able to provide an individualised education for her children. We've been hearing that some of the increases in home education recently have been down to children who perhaps their needs were not being met in school, and they are now thriving in home education. And it's really important that parents have that choice and the support to be able to do that.
Beth, give us the context of, I guess, why we're all talking about that. In the Education Bill, there's going to be new measures imposed on those people that do homeschooling, in particular a central register, which was in part inspired by the sad story of Sarah Sharif to add monitoring, I guess, of people who are homeschooled.
Yeah, well, firstly, we recognise that the majority of parents who are home educating, like Jack's, doing a brilliant job. But we do know there is a very small minority of children for whom home education might not be a safe place. And this register will just allow the local authority to know who is in home education. And for the most part, like Jack's, just leave them to do the incredible job they are, but just to be able to monitor that very small minority of children who might be at risk. And also, if it is wanted, I think what's really important is that home educating parents, if they want to receive support from the local authority, for example, such as help accessing GCSE exams and things like that, they can. But also, like we've heard from Jax, they're doing a brilliant job and kind of home educating their children.
Yeah, can we jump back to Jax very quickly? Jax, what's really interesting is that when it works, homeschooling, it can be brilliant, I suppose. How did you balance in the early days? Quite curious of that social element for particularly the kids, you know, when they're at school, making friendships. How did you handle that?
There's a lot of different ways of doing that. There are home education groups and meetups, and we did a lot of that in the sort of earlier days. There are things like uniformed groups, scouts, guides, cadets, all of these type of things, and my children did lots of that sort of thing. There are things like swimming lessons, you know, or trampolining they did for a while, or they even tried out golf, which was interesting. You know, so there's lots of different avenues for meeting with different people and building different relationships. And in fact, when my eldest went into school to access her GCSE exams, she went in age 15. She knew so many people in that school already from the variety of different groups that she'd attended. The teachers were quite taken aback because they were expecting somebody who didn't have the connections, didn't have the social abilities, and she really sort of knocked them back, showing that you can build those connections outside of the school environment, and you're not then limited to only the people in your exact age group, only the people in your exact area, only the people whose parents have chosen that particular school.
What do you make, Jax, of the measures in the bill and the register around homeschooling? Is that a sensible step to ensure safety, even if it's not necessarily needed for the vast majority of parents that homeschool?
I think it's interesting to note that I believe the Education Secretary has even been quizzed on this point as well. And Sarah Sharif would not have been covered by the regulations that they're pointing out because she wasn't under an active child protection plan at that point. She was already very well known to multiple agencies, and the problem is that those agencies didn't use the powers that they have to keep that very vulnerable child safe. Her school had pointed out the issues with it. There were, records going back years and years and years about the issues and risks associated in that family. Home education is being waved around as a concern, diverting the attention from the agencies that fail to support that child.
Beth, you might not be the right person to respond to this, not perhaps on behalf of the government, but is there truth to that? Do you think that it actually should be focused in a different way, this register?
Well, I think in the Sarah Sharif case, the tragic case there, what we saw was that perhaps there were also fixes that need to be made within the social care system as well, and I think Jax has highlighted that. And I think what we also know is that the education system and schools are struggling at the moment as well. And I think, therefore, we need to look at this kind of across the board and think what else can we do so that parents, schools and local authorities are all working together to support every child in partnership with each other.
So Jax, just to conclude on that point, is this register something that you think is it sounds like you think it's an unnecessary burden, but is it a burden too far for homeschooling, or is it reasonable and something that you can sort of take in your stride?
The issue will be not with the idea of a register. It will be with how that is implemented, what information is gathered, how that information is kept safe. There's lots of documentation about data breaches from local authorities. There are very real issues with how they handle children's data. We hear stories very regularly of parents receiving documentation about other children rather than their own. And if that sort of thing is an issue, putting all of that data in one place, this has been proposed before and discarded before because there are so many aspects to it that could actually make children less safe.
Jax and Beth, thank you both very much for your perspectives this morning and for joining us. Much appreciated. Now to the world's largest religious event, which kicks off in India today. It's held once every 12 years and draws crowds of 400 million Hindu pilgrims. Our India reporter Neville Lazarus is there. Sent us this update.
Well, today is the beginning of this 45-day celebration, which the government estimates 400 million pilgrims, devotees will descend on and on the banks of the holy river Ganga and Yamuna. They'll converge here. You can see behind me for miles on, people have come here for self-purification. They take a holy dip in the Ganga, cleansing them. But it is also a massive tent city. It's about 10,000 acres wide, this whole area. There are 160,000 tents being pitched up. About 400 kilometers of temporary roads have been set up, 200 kilometers of sewage lines, 150,000 toilets being set up in this place, all for about $815 million that was been spent on this. And you can see the number of people. There are activists who are concerned about this large number in terms of pollution, in terms of health risk, but also it is faith that has brought them all here on the banks.
Lazarus there for us. We've got a little bit of breaking news crossing relating to the Chagos Islands. Serena has the detail and the update for us.
Yes, so this is an ongoing deal that is trying to be finalised between the UK government and Mauritius. Essentially, the UK wants to hand sovereignty over to Mauritius, these islands that were under UK rule. But we would have a 99-year lease, essentially, over an airbase there, Diego Garcia. So that's where money would be handed from the UK to Mauritius to lease out that airbase, essentially. There has been sort of issues and disagreements with the government. So the government say that this is a good idea. The Conservatives say this is a monumental failure of statecraft. And Nigel Farage has said there has been very deep disquiet across the pond, alluding to the fact that Donald Trump may have issues with this deal. So there has been this kind of behind-the-scenes panic trying to sign the deal before the inauguration. Now, we've got a statement today, which is a bit of an update, saying representatives from Mauritius and the UK held further productive discussions in London this week on the future of the Chagos archipelago. A good progress has been made and discussions are ongoing to reach an agreement that is in both sides' interests. I mean, it's not that much of an update. It just shows how much they want to get this agreed before the inauguration. That's only a couple of days' time. But the Foreign Office say this is in all interests.
Yeah. I think the update, I agree, not huge in the detail, but shows that the government, regardless of some perhaps wiggle room and opportunity to back away from doing a deal at all, is still pushing ahead regardless, as David Lammy kind of suggested when we had him on last week. Serena, for now, thanks so much. Still to come here on The Breakfast Show. We'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll have the very latest on all the day's news.
Mayhem in the Middle East, rippling in America's West.
Get back! Get back!
The resolve of these protesters is now being seriously tested. I saw police being forced or pushing young men and women to the ground as they made almost 100 arrests.
None of this is a peaceful protest.
I'm Martha Kellner and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Los Angeles. How are you feeling?
I am angry. It is an anti-woman agenda.
Sky News, get the full story first. Will the cold affect your voters?
Well, we have a lot of tremendous support, but it's nasty out there.
Can you beat Donald Trump, Governor? President Biden, do you trust President Xi? President Biden says that this meeting went well. He said real progress was made on a whole host of issues. Will your candidates win?
I hope so. I think they will. I think they're great candidates.
There's no doubt that Kamala Harris and her team are harnessing the power of social media. Do you think Kamala is brat?
Kamala's brat.
Are you scared?
Yeah, we were scared. It was terrible. Strong wind, building tearing down.
As them say, our God works, so we can't do nothing.
The people here know that worse storms may well be on their way. Free, wherever you get your news.
Excited.
I've had severe nightmares of these people coming in and just taking me in the middle of the night.
Ghislaine Maxwell has pleaded not guilty to all 6 charges against her. Mum, how are you feeling today?
Jeffrey said, you answer to Ghislaine, you just don't cross her.
I'm James Matthews, and I'm Sky's US correspondent, based here in Washington, D.C. Donald Trump, it would appear, is about to learn his fate. There's no doubting the strength of this hurricane as it roars through. Sky News, get the full story first. Do you fear a 4th indictment?
He's from Sky News. He's from Sky News. He's entitled to ask me questions.
This is the game changer seat. Look, it even comes with binoculars. Flying units, fly better. Thank you.
Welcome back to Sky News Breakfast. We're going to talk about the impact on the Hollywood industry of the wildfires now. Of course, these wildfires have now seen 24 people confirmed dead. The state's governor says it could well be the costliest disaster in US history, and firefighters are scrambling to get the fires under control before it is forecast for winds to pick back up again. Among the destroyed buildings are the Palisades Charter High School. That was used for the filming of Hollywood movies Carrie and Freaky Friday, and the MTV series Teen Wolf. 3,000 students usually attend the school, which has been inside the evacuation zone. Let's bring in our arts and entertainment correspondent, Katie Spencer. Katie, these fires are unbelievably devastating, of course, mainly because of the loss of life, also because of the loss of homes, but it's also a massive blow for business and the big business of Hollywood.
Yeah, it's affected so many people. Not only has it been homes that have been lost, but also it's affecting the work that can be done in Hollywood and the surrounding areas at the moment, and also the employees that work within the industry who've lost their homes, who simply sort of can't resume their jobs and get back to work. Also, we've seen so much, haven't we, of the celebrities that have lost their homes. It's sort of these fires have known no sort of won't distinguish between how much you earn or anything. So Anthony Hopkins, Paris Hilton, Mel Gibson, Billy Crystal, they've all lost their homes. And iconic landmarks, which anyone who's ever visited California, some of the landmarks that are the sort of go-to things that you go to visit, the Will Rogers State Park, you might be aware of his name. He was one of the sort of golden era of Hollywood. He donated the vast swathes of the Palisades that he owned back to the California state, and vast amounts of the natural park that he owned is some of the land that's burned, including the ranch house that a lot of people go to visit. As you say, Palisades Charter High School, which is one of those sort of iconic locations that you go and visit to kind of tour if you're into the movies, to kind of see where various things were filmed. That now pretty much has burnt down. The Getty Villa, which is home to some really rare antiquities. According to the trust that owns the Getty Villa, the flames made it to the grounds of the villa itself, but remarkably, they didn't manage to get any of these antiquities, so thankfully that was safe. 10 miles down the road is the Getty Centre, which was subject to an evacuation order as well, but thankfully, again, some of these more recent buildings, they have factored in things like they've been built out of sort of more fireproof stone as well. So I think they've had to really contend with so much really within the last week. There's been various sort of rumours swirling about whether the Hollywood sign itself had burnt down. Various sort of social media posts had been claiming that it was no more, and they'd had to issue a statement saying, look, it's still standing, but yeah, has been sort of affected by the smoke.
Focusing on the industry a little bit, I mean, obviously amazing to think that the Golden Globes, that celebratory night, was just before all this happened.
Crazy.
What's the update on Oscars? And I mean, BAFTAs is obviously a long way away,
but again,
geographically, but
some of the the stars would be travelling over from America as well. So it's going to be, I suspect BAFTA won't be affected so much, but we know certainly in terms of the Oscar nominations announcement was due to be this Friday. That now has been postponed to the Sunday, where we'll find out who's nominated. But it is no official announcement has been made, but certainly this is going to, at the very least, be affecting the tone of the ceremony, which is due to take place on March the 3rd. It'll be interesting to see whether they do actually stick to that date, though.
Positive, celebratory feeling.
And to dress up with your finest designer outfits on, you just can't imagine the celebrities are going to want to do that, really.
Katie, great stuff for that. Thank you very much. Now, we're just going to talk a little bit about a survey that has been carried out of 2,000 young adults between 18 to 27, and it's found that 1 in 5 don't know what a spanner is, and nearly a quarter can't change one of these. Now, earlier, Katie wasn't here for the first time we chatted about this story. Serena and Molly were. Molly didn't even know what this was.
Bulb.
I'm exaggerating a little bit. I'm exaggerating a little bit.
It's being mean. It's the end of the morning.
But Katie, would you pay for someone to come in and change your light bulb?
No, that's what your partners are for.
Exactly.
I always get the fear that I don't know whether you're going to electrocute yourself or something.
There's so many different types of like light fittings, and also I actually do think you could do more damage sometimes by doing it yourself, especially when you're renting. Landlords have a go at you. So.
Yeah, well, Serena's got experience that she was blocked from changing a light bulb.
Yeah.
Ooh. I mean,
red tape in light bulb changing.
Outrageous. Look, our time is precious, isn't it? So if I suppose on the counter side that you can pay someone to mean that you have that family time, Wilfred.
I mean, look,
that's
as I've admitted this over the weekend, I paid for a handyman to help put it together. But so I did think I was going to be the person in this group most humiliated, and I'm just pleased that I haven't been. So you know, it is definitely when it goes a step further, proper building, carpentry, not a chance. I'm going to try and do that. I will destroy the house.
Yes, spanners.
Oh, I put a few IKEA things together, but this is exactly what I didn't do at the weekend. Was a baby cot, just for time constraints.
At least we all know what a spanner is.
Do we?
We go. Yes,
just
I know what a spanner is.
Anyway, but this is quite interesting. Quite interesting survey. I kind of can't really believe that 1 in 5 don't know what a spanner is.
But also it requires the millennials to pick up the phone and call your landlord to change your bulb, which none of them will.
Well, that's probably true as well. Well, anyway, there we go. We're going to end with some very good news, to pivot back to the story that Katie was talking about just beforehand. And, of course, many sad stories coming out of the fire in LA, but one very positive one as a man, after 5 days searching for his dog, did find it.
Hi, Bubba! How's the fire? Oh, honey! Oh, honey! Oh, my God, you're alive! You're alive! Oh, honey!
Well, Casey wasn't home when the evacuation order originally came in, didn't know what had happened to both his dog, Tika Tika and Oreo, and with the help of the firefighters, was there reunited with Oreo. I mean, wonderful footage there. Wonderful
So super. You just see the love, don't you, of both man and dog there.
And again, a reminder of just a few good stories coming out of all those devastating fires, which will continue, of course, to keep you up to speed on Sky News throughout the day and the week ahead if those flames do rear up again with the stronger winds that are forecast. But for now, we are out of time here. Thank you very much. Serena, Molly, Katie, Leah. What a great cast. Lucky to have around me today for The Breakfast Show. Thanks so much for watching. Sky News Today picks up after this short break.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. A new start to Sunday.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
This is Sky News Today, 10 o'clock, the headlines this hour. 24 people are now known to have died in the California wildfires, with forecasts of more strong winds triggering warnings of severe fire conditions.
They have to ensure that this ground is absolutely free of fire in case the wind picks up any embers and carries them back out into the bush.
In the Middle East, Israel's foreign minister says there's been progress on a hostage deal amid reports from Qatar of a breakthrough on ceasefire talks. Also today, a bid to boost AI. The Prime Minister prepares to unveil plans to make Britain a world leader in artificial intelligence. Plus,
Will you resign? Will you resign today? Good morning. What were your campaign efforts during your Ousalice?
the government's anti-corruption minister, Tulip Sadiq, faces growing questions over her family finances. And failing to deliver, Amazon boss Jeff Bezos' space company calls off the debut launch of its new rocket due to technical trouble. You're watching Sky News. I want to bring you some breaking news from the Middle East now. This is the Reuters news agency bringing us details of the Israeli foreign minister. Let me just bring that to you. Like I say, this is a reference to developments between Israel and Hamas. Well, the Israeli foreign minister says there has been progress on a hostage deal. Israel, he says, wants a deal soon. We will see if the other side want the same thing. So this is the Reuters news agency citing reports from the Israeli foreign minister that progress on a hostage deal has been made. Israel wants that deal, he says, and they will see if the other side wants the same thing, referencing there, of course, to Hamas. Obviously, a politically divided cabinet in Israel, so we will follow all of the developments and details as we get them. The full story first here on Sky. I want to take you now to the wildfires in the United States, because at least 24 people are confirmed to have been killed by those fires in Los Angeles. And that's been burning now for nearly a week. The state's governor says it could be the most expensive disaster in US history. Firefighters scrambling to get the fires under control before high winds, forecast to fan the flames further, arrive in the coming days. Well, this is the current situation for the fires that continue to burn across the city. Emergency services have managed to get a grip on some of the blazes, but the two largest fires, the Palisades and Eaton, are still burning largely out of control. The numbers here represent how contained the fires are. In the Palisades, there is only 13% containment. 27% of the Eaton fire is contained and 89% of the Hearst fire. David Blevins has the details.
They are desperate for hope. But the people and communities displaced by wildfires have lost everything.
It's my home church. It's my everything church.
Another congregation opened its doors to Altadena Community Church.
We're still finding out where people fled to. And so a chance to get together. It's a long drive out, but it's worth it because we need hugs. We need hugs.
The feeling of losing my church, the building is gone, it hasn't really sunk in yet.
Where do you find hope? Where does a person of faith find hope in the midst of this?
God.
1 in 3 members no longer has a home. Reverend Paul Tellstrom feels the weight of that.
We just have to get up tomorrow morning and start forward and make it happen all over. And I know people are tired. I mean, one of the difficult things is that I announced my retirement on Sunday, and then the church burned to the ground on Tuesday. How do you tell people it's going to be okay? But you know what? It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. We will do this.
A community coming together, politicians divided. President-elect Donald Trump calling Californian Democrats incompetent. This is one of the worst catastrophes in the history of our country, he posted on his Truth social media platform, adding, they just can't put out the fires. What's wrong with them? Criticism rejected by the Californian governor.
Well, I called for him to come out, take a look for himself. We want to do it in the spirit of an open hand, not a closed fist. He's the president-elect. I respect the office. I don't know what he's referring to when he talks about the Delta smelt in reservoirs. The reservoirs are completely full, the state reservoirs here in Southern California. That mis and disinformation, I don't think advantages or aids any of us.
It's an unrelenting battle. fires still raging across Los Angeles, and looters continue to take advantage of evacuated homes, one of them arrested, dressed as a firefighter. Reinforcements have arrived from Mexico. Fire crews on the ground are exhausted, attempting to save life and property. There's a real heart attachment to places of worship where these people have marked the milestones of their lives. But churches, mosques and synagogues also serve as community centres in these neighbourhoods, where people come when they need help. And they're gone. They're watching and waiting in hope that the worst has passed. But with warnings that the wind could strengthen again into the middle of the week, all they can do is pray. David Blevins, Sky News in Los Angeles.
We will return to the situation on the fires in a moment. Some breaking news for you now from the United Kingdom. Adil Khan, aged 30, from Waltham Forest, is being charged by the Metropolitan Police with assisting Daniel Khalif, the former soldier, after he escaped from prison. This is a second individual. Last week, Imran Chowdhury, 25, from Chingford, was also charged with helping Khalif after he'd broken out of HMP Wandsworth back in 2023. Chowdhury appeared at Westminster Magistrates Court last week, denied that one count of assisting an escaped prisoner. Well, today, Adil Khan, charged by the Metropolitan Police. He's also been charged with possession of a phone in prison, according to the Met. He is due to appear before Westminster Magistrates Court on Tuesday. A second individual charged with assisting Daniel Khalif after his prison escape in September 23. Just gone 6 minutes past 10. Let's return to the situation in the United States and the fires in Los Angeles. Earlier, we spoke to Clara from the LA Times newspaper. She told us that residents there are still worried about what's to come.
We still have the Palisades and Eaton fires, the two biggest blazes, burning a lot of ground. The Palisades fire is about 13% contained, and the Eaton fire, the one in Altadena where that church was, it's about 27% contained. These aren't terrible numbers, but it's because we have these really high winds forecast on the horizon, the worst of which will come Tuesday, that there is a lot of alarm that they aren't more contained at this point. It's just been such a never-ending stream of bad news here the last week that hearing that's coming in the pipeline has put the city back on edge again.
Well, it goes without saying, many firefighters have been risking their lives trying to protect their communities. Jane Secker's been to meet some of them.
On ladder going up.
When Fountain Valley Fire Crew got the call to head to Los Angeles last Tuesday, they had no idea what lay ahead.
Tool coming down.
This company and the 4 other companies we're with and our leadership fought fire for 72 straight hours without stopping. So that was a little intense, but the conditions were intense. There was a lot of wind, there was a lot of fire, a lot of heat, and there weren't enough resources to manage it, so we weren't going to leave. Holy cow!
And this is what they had to contend with, their own terrifying footage shared with us.
I myself and most of us didn't know how big this fire was or how bad. We kind of just thought it was bad where we were. And it wasn't really until that Thursday when we were able to leave and start moving down Sunset, then down PCH, when we noticed how much devastation had happened. So we didn't get to watch any news.
As to the row about failing water supplies, Brent is philosophical.
Water wasn't the problem for us in a lot of places. It was just being overrun by such huge winds with so much fire and so much heat. But there was definitely times when we could have used more water, but really more resources, more equipment, I don't know that it would have really helped.
But as the dangerous Santa Ana winds whip up again, focus has turned to prevention from the ground as well as the air.
What's happening here is going to be crucial in the coming hours as the winds pick up. They have to ensure that this ground is absolutely free of fire in case the wind picks up any embers and carries them back out into the bush.
So far, we found several little hot spots, of which we are basically turning the dirt into mud to making sure that it can't reignite.
The weather over the next 48 hours will be crucial. These exhausted crews are doing all they can now to get ahead of these blazes while they still have a chance. Jane Secker, Sky News, Los Angeles.
Well, despite the many stories of destruction and despair from the fires, hope does still remain. This man from the Palisades area of LA was searching for his dog Oreo for 5 days before this.
Hi, Bubba! How's the fire? Oh, honey! Oh, honey! Oh, my God, you're alive! You're alive! Oh, honey! Oh, wow!
Undoubtedly an emotional reunion. Casey wasn't at home when the evacuation order came in, so didn't know what had happened to his dogs, Tika and Oreo. With the help, though, from firefighters, they are now safely reunited.
NBC! Where's NBC? Where are you?
Here in the UK, the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, under growing pressure to sack the anti-corruption minister Tulip Siddiq over allegations about her family finances. They centre on links between the MP and the political allies of her aunt, who was the former Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina. Well, Ms Siddiq currently rents a £2 million house in North London, owned by a businessman with reported links to Sheikh Hasina's Awani League party. She also owns a flat in central London that the Financial Times reports was gifted to her by an ally of her aunt. And she's also been registered as living at another London property that was transferred to her sister in 2009 by a lawyer who has represented Sheikh Hasina's government. We heard from Ms Siddiq earlier this morning as she left her London home.
Will you resign?
Tulip Siddiq, will you resign today?
Good morning.
What will your campaign leaflets go in your aunt's palace?
How can you be that anti-corruption minister when you're being accused of corruption?
Are you history's unluckiest anti-corruption minister? What did Keir Starmer say to you today?
Well, we spoke to the Cabinet Minister, Pat McFadden, this morning and asked him what he made of Ms Siddiq's actions.
I think she's done the right thing by referring herself to the independent advisor. Let him look through all this. He's independent. I'm not independent. I'm a member of the Cabinet. Let the independent advisor, whose job it is to do this, look at these things and let us see what he's got to say once he's done that.
We'll get reaction and analysis on that story throughout the course of the morning here on Sky News. In the meantime, I want to bring you up to speed on some of the day's other stories. The UK and Mauritius say they're making good progress in talks to reach a treaty over the future of the Chagos Islands. In a joint statement, the two sides said discussions are ongoing and reiterated their commitment to an outcome where Mauritius holds sovereignty over the islands and the future of the British and American military base there is still secured. Police divers have been deployed to the River Dee in Aberdeen in search for two sisters who disappeared in the city 6 days ago. 32-year-olds Eliza and Henrietta Hutzi were last seen on CCTV after leaving their home on Tuesday afternoon. Police marine units have been patrolling the river with divers searching under the water. Specialist search teams and police dogs are also trying to trace the pair. Heathrow Airport has announced that 2024 was its busiest year on record. That's in terms of passenger numbers. Nearly 84 million people flew in and out of the airport last year. That's 3 million more than the previous record set in 2019 before numbers massively reduced by the global COVID pandemic. Heathrow said it expects the record to be broken again this year. To space now, the launch of the Amazon boss Jeff Bezos' space company's debut rocket has been called off. That's after a series of delays due to technical trouble this morning. Blue Origin's New Glenn rocket signifies a new phase in competition in the commercial space market, posing a challenge to Elon Musk's SpaceX, which has dominated the scene in recent years. I want to take you to our Westminster studio. Let's bring in Srina Barker Singh for more on the situation with regards to Tulip Siddiq and the allegations that surround the family finances. Just talk to us about how big an issue this is proving for her and also for the government.
Well, I think it's awkward. Look, she's the anti-corruption minister. Now she's potentially linked to corruption, albeit in another country. So this is she's linked to properties that she was living in that were either bought by political allies of an ousted Bangladeshi government or lawyers or allies close to that government. Now, she's referred to herself to the Standards Commissioner. The government say that they're waiting for that investigation to conclude, but you've got the Conservatives saying that she should go. This is not good optically. Of course, you know, her whole job is stamping out any sort of corruption within the government. She sits in the Treasury, so she's a Treasury minister. Also, she's very close to Sir Keir Starmer. They've got neighbouring constituencies. I think whether political pressure will mean that this government can handle all of the onslaught that is coming from the opposition, or whether they can wait for the independent investigation to conclude, I think we'll have to wait to see. But certainly this is another blow to Sir Keir Starmer and optically doesn't look great for his government at the moment.
No, a challenging time for the government. Do stay with us, Serena, actually, for a moment, because I just want to talk about AI. This is the government's key focus today. It says it's going to mainline AI into the veins of the UK under plans unveiled by the Prime Minister this morning. He's set to promise investment, jobs and economic growth due to a boom in the sector, which could potentially bring £47 billion to the economy every year. Well, let's take a look at some of the measures set to be announced. Well, the government's says that the private sector is set to invest £14 billion, creating around 13,000 jobs. The majority of the jobs will be in construction roles, building new data centres and other infrastructure. The new data centres will be located in special AI growth zones, which will speed up planning proposals. And all these measures are being considered essential to the Prime Minister's ambition of Britain becoming a world leader in AI. Well, the volatility of those markets is continuing today. We'll have more on that in a moment. But let's talk about the AI issue here, Serena, because, you know, there's the pressure from the volatile markets. There's the pressure with regards to kind of government ministers. But the government will really want to focus on AI because at the end of the day, it's got the trouble that the economy isn't growing as fast as it wants it to, as fast as it needs it to. And it needs new ways to try and turbocharge that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this is what the government does want to talk about today. As you said, Keir Starmer is going to have a speech later this morning outlining some of those measures. But yeah, essentially, they're trying to forge new AI growth zones. They think that will speed up planning proposal, increasing the public's capacity for processing power. So there's new supercomputers, they say, and a new team to seize on all the opportunities of AI. The government are out this morning saying that AI is already coming. This is something that is inevitable and we should be part of that change. That's their argument. It also, as you say, feeds into their bigger, wider message of economic growth, which isn't going to plan at the moment. So this is trying to show that their strategy for economic growth is coming from other directions. You've got the Tony Blair Institute saying that this could save £40 billion. So it's not just upping productivity, but it's creating jobs and wealth back into the economy. But the public are sceptical with just the sort of headline figure of AI. So I think part of the big speech today is also trying to get people on side and communication on really getting the public to embrace the new technology and the AI measures that they're putting in place.
Serena, in Westminster, thank you. Well, I mentioned earlier the volatility of the markets. It's continuing today. The UK's borrowing costs increasing, the outlook for the economy looking less rosy, it's fair to say, than the Chancellor would have hoped for at the time of the budget last October. Following the developments, our business presenter Darren McCaffrey. Darren, how's it looking out there?
Yeah, very good morning to you, Gareth. Not quite as dramatic as last week, but certainly, as you've rightly pointed out, there is continued volatility, particularly when it comes to UK bonds, which, again, are eking in the wrong direction, both for 30-year bonds and also 10-year bonds. And what does that mean? Well, it effectively means that the cost of UK borrowing debt is continuing to increase, and that means more of our taxation is going to have to be paid to pay off the interest on the debt and the bonds. And so that's not good because it means that it's going to box the Chancellor in when it comes to some big decisions about the economy, because frankly she's going to have to find more money, and the expectation is that if this continues, and as I say this morning, there's no sign that it is abating, that the government may well have to cut public spending, and that means, of course, squeezing government departments even more than have been planned throughout this Parliament. And it comes at a time too in which sterling is taking a hit, again down 0.5 percentage point against the dollar today. Now, it should be noted that the increase in government bonds is not unique to the UK. It's happening elsewhere in Europe and indeed in the United States too. It's concern about government debt and high interest rates and potentially inflation too do seem to be a problem for the global economy in 2025. But when it comes to the UK economy, it does seem a bit more acute here. And that may mean that interest rates maybe don't fall this year at all, and that will have big consequences, of course, for people's mortgages. So all in all, not the best economic start, it must be said, for Rachel Reeves and for the government into 2025. The government have got growth at the heart, they say, of their agenda. Can they manage to find that? As I say, as all the economic indicators so far this year aren't frankly going in the right direction.
Darren, thank you so much. Just worth noting as well that you can read more on the story on the Money blog on the Sky News website and the Sky News app. Market misery as government borrowing jumps again, pound falls and oil price spikes. Get the details for yourselves. Now then, you're watching Sky News Today. Still to come, a bereaved mum looks for answers as MPs debate whether parents should have access to their children's social media. With warnings, the California wildfires could be the costliest disaster in US history. We hear from a journalist on the ground. And hundreds of millions of Hindus gather in India for the world's largest religious festival. We'll take you there.
Mayhem in the Middle East, rippling in America's West.
Get back!
The resolve of these protesters is now being seriously tested. I saw police being forceful, pushing young men and women to the ground as they made almost 100 arrests.
None of this is a peaceful protest.
I'm Martha Kellner and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Los Angeles. How are you feeling?
I am angry.
It is an anti-woman agenda. Sky News, get the full story first. Will the cold affect your voters?
Well, we have a lot of tremendous support, but it's nasty out there.
Can you beat Donald Trump, Governor? President Biden, do you trust President Xi? President Biden says that this meeting went well. He said real progress was made on a whole host of issues. Will your candidates win?
I hope so. I think they will. I think they're great candidates.
There's no doubt that Kamala Harris and her team are harnessing the power of social media. Do you think Kamala is brat?
Kamala's brat.
Are you scared?
Yeah, we were scared. It was terrible. Strong wind, building tearing down.
As them say, our God works, so we can't do nothing.
The people here know that worse storms may well be on their way. Free, wherever you get your news.
Excited.
I've had severe nightmares of these people coming in and just taking me in the middle of the night.
Ghislaine Maxwell has pleaded not guilty to all 6 charges against her. Mum, how are you feeling today?
Jeffrey said, you answer to Ghislaine, you just don't cross her.
Want to bring you more now on the breaking news we brought to you earlier. Israel's foreign minister has said this morning that progress has been made on a hostage deal.